Picking up later overnight. It'll still be mild, but not quite as mild as today. Low pressure is controlling our weather. These weather fronts are bringing some wet weather this evening and tonight. In fact, this cold front will sink southwards, spreading a band of rain across all areas. Could be quite heavy for a time as well, so you may get woken up. And at the same time, in the northwest, the winds are going to get very lively indeed. A very blustery night over the Western Isles and northern parts of the mainland of Scotland, where there'll be further rain. There's that rain band sweeping across England and Wales. Clearer skies follow on behind, but temperatures are going to stay a few degrees above freezing. So it'll be a slightly fresher start to Friday compared to Thursday, but it won't be that cold. And for many, Friday's then a fine bright day. Plenty of showers still across Scotland. The winds steadily easing here and the showers clearing away as well. So the central belt having a dry afternoon. Clouding over parts of northern England and North Wales with a little bit of showery rain here and the threat of some rain at times along the south coast. But for many, as I said, it's a dry and a bright day. Still pretty mild. Temperatures above average, but just not quite as warm as today. We are going to see more wet weather on Friday evening. Initially, a few showers in the southwest, but that turning into a pretty intense band of rain sweeping in during Friday night and into the weekend. It means Saturday starts fairly soggy for a good chunk of England, Wales and southern Scotland. That rain should be edging away to the east. Drier weather following for a time, but then a whole raft of showers coming into western parts during the afternoon. So the weather's chopping and changing all the while, a fairly brisk breeze as well. Temperatures could get to 10 or 11, maybe 12 Celsius on Saturday morning, but actually feeling cooler through the course of the day. Temperatures tending to drop off and temperatures back closer to average by Sunday, which will see some sunny spells, but it will still be pretty blustery with further heavy showers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hey, welcome along everybody. It's just gone 3 o'clock. You're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. As ever, it's a jam-packed show to get your teeth stuck into this afternoon. I'm quite excited for this one. Prince Harry has released some shocking details of how William allegedly slapped him about a bit. He's piped up about why he's justified in speaking out now.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
I mean, it's revelation after revelation, isn't it? Anyway, so yes, he claims to have been physically assaulted by his brother, but more than that. He also claims it was William's idea for him to wear the Nazi uniform. To be honest, I think that makes him sound like a bit of an idiot. But whatever. Do these revelations make you have more sympathy for Harry? I want to know. Also this hour, yesterday we heard from the Prime Minister as he set out his vision for 2023, that now infamous 5-point plan. But today, his opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, gave us an insight into his own plans for the Labour Party. The Labour leader said that he wouldn't get the cheque put out, but also said as well that he wouldn't ban large-scale strike action. So I'm not quite sure how that adds up. We're going to be getting stuck right into that, people. Was his rallying call a vote winner for you? And will you drive slower to save our planet? There are calls to limit speed limits even more on motorways to help us with that net zero target, amid reports that sales of new cars have sunk to the lowest level in 3 decades, but electric cars have overtaken diesel in the popularity charts. Let me know what you think on everything that we discuss, as ever. I love having you on this show. You can get yourself on the telly, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Look, realistically, what do you think I want to hear from you about today? I want to hear from you about you telling me your sibling scraps. That's right, and whether or not you feel sorry for Harry. Just reveal to me some of the sibling scraps that you and your siblings have had. gbviews at gbnews.uk. But before that, it's your latest headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 3:02. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB Newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has promised a decade of national renewal if Labour comes to power. In his first speech for the new year, the Labour leader set out plans to modernise central government. A day after Rishi Sunak outlined his 5 promises, Sir Keir claimed the Prime Minister doesn't have the solutions to the country's problems.
You saw it yesterday from the Prime Minister. Commentary without solution. More promises, more platitudes. No ambition to take us forward. No sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries. 7 million on waiting lists and rising.
James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, meanwhile, says Labour has worked against finding solutions.
They've opposed our desire to bring in limitations on the abuse of unions, which causing strikes that are hurting ordinary working families. He's stood against our attempts to control illegal migration and get a grip of those people smuggling gangs. All the things that we've tried to do to bring real change, positive change to this country, the Labour Party have opposed time and time again, and all we saw in that speech was the same old from Labour.
Prince Harry reportedly claims he was attacked by his brother over his marriage to Meghan Markle in his autobiography Spare. A leaked extract published in The Guardian alleges Prince William grabbed Harry by the collar and knocked him to the floor in 2019, leaving him with a visible injury to his back. Harry also claims William called Meghan difficult, rude and abrasive. It's been revealed the Duke of Sussex refers to his brother as his arch nemesis in the memoir. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment. Up to 60,000 mourners are thought to have gathered in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican this morning for the funeral of former Pope Benedict XVI. The Mass was led by Pope Francis. It's the first time in 600 years that the current Pope has buried his predecessor. Benedict XVI is being laid to rest in a crypt beneath the St. Peter's Basilica, according to his wishes. The government's decided it won't go ahead with a plan to privatise Channel 4. The idea to sell the broadcaster was announced during Boris Johnson's government. Former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries had said government ownership was holding the channel back, but her successor, Michelle Donnellan, has decided the broadcaster shouldn't be sold. She's instead proposed other reforms, including greater commercial flexibility. ASLEF says further strikes are inevitable unless there's a breakthrough in the long-running row over pay. It's the 3rd consecutive day of rail disruption across the UK, and it's even worse today, with drivers from 15 different companies now on strike. Some areas have no trains at all running. ASLEF's General Secretary Mick Whelan told us union members won't back down.
I'm always hopeful, but the longer it goes on, the problems get greater. When we first started talking, inflation was 5.2%. It went to 14% last year. So 14% last year and in double digits this year. Effectively, over the 4 years, my members have seen a 25% cut in their living standards, as have many other workers. How long can that go on for?
New car sales have sunk to their lowest level in 30 years. Preliminary data shows that around 1.6 million were registered here in the UK last year. That's a quarter below pre-COVID levels. Supply shortages of items such as semiconductors are being blamed, driven by coronavirus lockdowns in China. Electric cars, though, made up 23% of all newly registered vehicles. And a British tourist has been shot dead in Jamaica in what police there think may have been a contract killing ordered here in the UK. 33-year-old Sean Patterson from West London was shot multiple times by the pool of his holiday villa in St James. The personal trainer was on his first visit to the island to meet his father. Jamaican police say one man's been taken into custody as they continue to work on the case with UK authorities. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. Back to Patrick.
Well, more fireworks in the royal household as Prince Harry has accused his brother William of physically attacking him during a row over his relationship with Meghan Markle. Parts of the Duke of Sussex's new autobiography, Spare, have been made public after a copy of the book was leaked. Shock horror to The Guardian. And there's reports this afternoon that it's accidentally already on sale in Spain. The Duke of Sussex is quoted as saying the confrontation took place in his London home in 2019 after William had called Meghan difficult, rude and abrasive. Can you imagine that? GB News has not yet seen a copy of Spare, and Kensington Palace said it has no comment to make. But also today, a new trailer for his interview with ITV has dropped, and this focuses on Harry trying to justify his actions.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Yes, of course. Now, if you are just joining us or you've been living on the moon with your fingers in your ears, Harry says certain things like William confronted him, grabbed him round the collar, ripped his necklace, his big manly necklace. He fell back into a dog bowl. The dog bowl cracked. He had a bruise on his back and it all kicked off. He also says, of course, as well, that William planted the seed in his mind that he should wear a Nazi uniform, which, I mean, doesn't make you actually go out and buy a Nazi uniform and then wear it in public, does it? But there we go. I have been asking you to send in your sibling scraps, OK? GBViews at gbnews.uk. And already you wonderful people have not disappointed, including Julie, who apparently used to set on her brother with the steam off the kettle. She was about 11 at the time. But there we go. Keep them coming in. It's rather entertaining. The crucial bit is none of you have written a book about it. Anyway, joining us now is our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, Harry got slapped around a bit, did he?
Well, that is the allegation that Prince Harry makes in his memoir. It's a leaked extract that's been given to the Guardian newspaper this morning. Yeah, so William allegedly called Meghan rude, difficult and abrasive. Shocking. Of course, that is the narrative which many people have claimed Meghan is like. We don't know Meghan personally, so we couldn't possibly say, but that is what Prince William thinks, according to Prince Harry. Then Prince William pushed him to the ground, allegedly, and he fell onto a dog bowl. The dog bowl cracked, as you said, and he ripped his necklace as well. To many people, they are saying that this is a normal sibling scrap. The issue is Prince William's the heir to the throne. Yeah. And Prince Harry is also Prince of the Realm at that point. And the fact it's now being played out very much in public for the whole world to see doesn't look very good for either Kensington Palace or Prince Harry. Clearly, Kensington Palace or Buckingham Palace have not commented on this. They haven't commented on any of the allegations we've seen so far. No, indeed. Now, before we get onto the Nazi uniform, I just want to talk about the fact that maybe the reason why this is all coming out and why Harry's got such a chip on his shoulder is because he does actually see William as his, quote, arch nemesis. Yes, so he has now done a third promotional interview for this book, Memoir Spare, with Good Morning America on ABC. And in that, excuse me, Prince Harry says, well, in the memoir, he refers to Prince William as his arch nemesis. Now, the interviewer challenges Prince Harry on that and said, what do you mean that Prince William is your arch nemesis? His response was that they've been challenging each other from the start. They've been, excuse me, Harry and William throughout their childhood have always been at odds with each other. So that's what he is referring to, the fact that Prince Harry is the spare and Prince William is the heir. So he is always essentially in Prince William's shadow.
Yes, I can understand that, and I can understand how at times during childhood that might be difficult. It's probably worth me disclosing at the moment. You know, I don't have any brothers or sisters, so sibling rivalries have been lost on me. Although a lot of my friends, of course, have brothers and sisters, and I have witnessed some epic scraps, especially the ones that take place on the front lawn so all the neighbours can see. And it is, to be honest with you, normally quite good value. They do normally settle the dispute, though, and move on, and it's one of those things that people do tend to move on from. One of the biggest regrets for Prince Harry, he says it's one of the biggest regrets of his life, and I'm not surprised, by the way, is wearing a Nazi uniform in public. And we can all agree that probably wasn't the best idea. He now is trying to, essentially, blame William and Kate for this.
Yeah, so he said during the Netflix documentary that wearing that Nazi uniform was one of the biggest mistakes of his life. But Prince Harry claims in his new book that it was actually on the suggestion of William and Kate that he wore the Nazi uniforms. This is a party back in 2005. They were both in their early 20s. The theme of the party, native and colonial. That was the theme of the party. Prince Harry, he says, had two separate options to wear. He had a pilot outfit and he had the Nazi outfit. He rang up Will and Kate.
For the Nazi outfit.
He rang up Will and Kate to ask which one they think he should wear. Will and Kate allegedly told him to wear the Nazi uniform. Prince William allegedly howled with laughter when he saw his brother wearing the uniform.
Because he never thought he'd actually do it, did he? It's like, oh yeah, go on, mate, that'll be funny. Like your drunk mate down the pub when you go, go on, mate, that'll be a laugh, and then he actually does it. You know, I don't think it paints Harry in a particularly good light, does it? And actually maybe implies how easily led he is.
But then the problem with then was that a picture of him wearing this Nazi uniform ended up on the front cover of the Sun newspaper, clearly hugely damaging for his reputation. And again, it goes with the narrative that Prince Harry believes that the institution was covering up perhaps Prince William's mistake, in inverted commas, to make Prince William look better and Harry look worse. But from as far as I can tell, there is no one who physically forced Prince Harry to wear that uniform. I mean, he was an adult.
William didn't stitch him into it, did he? You know, it wasn't like, right, come on, Harry, I'm holding you down now over the dog bowl. Get the dog bowl back out, Kate. Go over the dog bowl, stitching him into a Nazi uniform, fitting with armband and everything. No, I mean, I don't really think this paints Harry in a particularly good light. So this is now being drip-fed out. We're going to be talking about this throughout the course of the show. By the way, the inbox in front of me now is popping off with your sibling rivalry stories, which actually a lot of them are a lot worse than an alleged scrap between Harry and Wills. One thing I did find interesting, just going back to this notion that William allegedly, anyway, confronted Harry, he was spitting mad, said that he didn't particularly like the way that Meghan was behaving, that he was already fizzing with rage. He then approached Harry. Harry retreated into the kitchen. William realised he made a mistake and urged Harry to hit him back. I think is just quite funny.
Yeah, Prince Harry says that William later apologised for the fact that he pushed him to the ground. Again, it's this narrative, isn't it? But it was a bit of a sibling scrap. Prince Harry also said he was scared of his brother. This is the Prince Harry who served 2 tours of Afghanistan.
2 tours of Afghan, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, so the Taliban, that's fine. I can take on the Taliban. Angry older brother, less so.
I think what we do need to remember is Prince Harry, although it's his words, it was written by a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter would have known that he needed to make it as dramatic as possible in order to make the book sellable.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Well, absolutely. Look, Cameron,
we're only getting one side of the story.
And we are only getting one side of the story. And it looks as though, as it currently stands, we might only get one side of the story because they're rising above it, the royal family.
As it stands, yes, they are.
They are. All right, Cameron, thank you very much. As ever, Cameron Walker there, our royal correspondent. Right, now, we do have a little clip, I believe, as well, another clip. This is Prince Harry just prattling on again, I think.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Some people will say, you have railed against invasions of your privacy all your life. But the accusation will be, here are you invading the privacy of your most nearest and dearest without permission. That'll be the accusation.
That would be the accusation from the people that don't understand or don't want to believe that my family have been briefing the press.
If you're invited to the coronation, will you come?
There's a lot that can happen between now and then. But, you know, the door is always open. The ball is in their court. There's a lot to be discussed, and I really hope that they are willing to sit down and talk about it.
Do you still believe in the monarchy?
Yes.
Do you believe you'll play a part in its future?
I don't know.
Right, well, there we go. Look, as you can imagine, we're going to be turning our attention back to the great big royal rumble throughout the course of this show. It's fair to say that not a lot of you have too much sympathy for Prince Harry. If you do have sympathy for Prince Harry and this has changed your mind on him, or you always had sympathy for him, make sure you let me know. I am asking you to send in your sibling rivalry stories, including John, who copped a rather nasty headbutt off his brother in the front garden, but it said that the dispute was settled shortly after that. Another John has been on as well. He said his brother used to beat him up 3 times a year. He says never did him any harm, although, of course, I suppose it's all subjective. John, did you have to call your therapist afterwards and not tell your new wife? I don't know. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Right, now, Sir Keir Starmer, more serious matters, some would say. Sir Keir Starmer has accused Rishi Sunak of offering the country only more promises, more platitudes, as he hit out at sticking plaster politics in his New Year's speech he delivered in London earlier today. The Labour leader also claimed that his party would embrace the take back control message. It was an interesting turn of phrase, that. But we'll turn it from a slogan to a solution, with plans to devolve new powers over employment support, transport, energy, climate change, housing, culture, childcare provision and how councils run their finances. Some would argue that's giving away control, but hey, I'm splitting hairs here. He did also address the migrant crisis, which is one of the Prime Minister's top 5 priorities. Starmer said the main aspect of Labour's plan for preventing migrant crossings in the English Channel in small boats revolved around cracking down on criminal gangs, speeding up the asylum process, some upstream stuff there, some downstream stuff. We'll talk about all of that. I believe we might be able to have a little bit of a listen to some of the key moments from his speech.
People know we care. They always know the Labour Party cares. And they can now see a party that is both competent and compassionate. A party that understands what it means to put service to the country first.
It did look as though he was stood in front of a transformer, didn't it? But anyway, now let's get some reaction from our political reporter, Catherine Forster, and our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Catherine, I'll go with you. You were there. What was it like?
I'd just like to say about that orange robotic arm.
Yeah.
They very deliberately, they had their speech in East London, metres away from where the Prime Minister did his yesterday with a very sort of staid blue backdrop. But they've gone to this UCL, the Advanced Manufacturing Robots, tech, all the things that Labour want to push and say that we've got huge potential in this country that we need to develop. But what really struck me was those 3 little words, take back control, because, of course, that was Dominic Cummings' genius slogan that helped get the Brexit vote through, and Keir Starmer was Mr Remainer, wasn't he? He campaigned very strongly for Remain. He then campaigned for a second referendum, saying, let's have a rethink. And now he's saying, yes, he campaigned for Remain, but when he was going around the country, he said he couldn't disagree with the basic case of what people wanted, which was good public services, opportunities for their children, good jobs in their local areas, and that they get it. And so they're taking this slogan and they're going to have a bill in the King's speech, assuming they get into government, a take back control bill, all about decentralising, giving people power back to their communities.
Yes, OK. I mean, it's top trolling, really, I think some people would say, to use that slogan to rehash it. Liam, I'll lob it your way now, our economics and business editor. Now, he said as well he wasn't going to get the chequebook out, at the same time as him saying that he wasn't going to introduce particularly tougher laws when it comes to banning strikes, clamping down on strikes. I'm not sure how he marries those 2 things up, because does this mean just strikes in perpetuity?
I thought at a time when Christmas is over, people are worried about their future, worried about the bills hitting the doormat, worried about their electricity and gas costs, worried about their kids buying a house. I thought this, frankly, and yesterday's speech from Rishi Sunak, a lot of political parlour games, a lot of phrase-making and gimmicky catchphrases with very little actual substantive policy on the table that people can think, do I want a government that does that or don't I? Look, I was a political correspondent for a long time. I'm obsessed with politics. I love the cut and thrust of politics. But I do think the country's screaming out for leadership. So where are the actual proposals from Keir Starmer on social housing he's going to build, on ways he's actually going to level up, going beyond platitudes about we're going to give power back, and a rather cynical rehash of a phrase, given that he knows a lot of Red Wall voters won't forgive him, particularly as a silky London lawyer, for trying to reverse the Brexit vote. So I understand how politics works, but I think at a time like now, our political class does itself a disservice with a lot of the phrase-making. What people want are concrete policies that will help them and their families to get through what's going to be a very tough year.
Yeah, they want something to cling on to, don't they? They want leadership. I think people do fundamentally want to be led. There's a fine line between that and electing a dictator. Of course there is. But people do want something that they can actually cling on to and really kind of be led by. But look, both of you, thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be back in shortly, I think. Catherine Forster there, our political reporter, and our economics and business editor. Liam Halligan giving their initial snap reaction to what Keir Starmer had to say earlier on. But speaking this afternoon, the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly criticised the Labour leader for being light on the detail, like Liam did.
What the whole country saw from that speech was a bit of a vacuum. He spoke a lot, didn't really say anything, and the things that we have had to deal with as a government over the last decade or so, including Russia's illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, a global pandemic, we've of course had to deal with. And Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, put the largest support package, keeping people in their jobs, keeping people in their homes, helping them put food on the table. We saw the rollout of a vaccination, and we've now seen our strong commitment to Ukraine as it defends itself against Russia. That's what we've been doing. What I've yet to see, and what I don't think anyone saw in that speech, was any Labour plans for the future.
Right, OK, well, that's James Cleverly there. Now, like we did with Rishi Sunak's grand plan for 2023 yesterday, the 5-point plan that you can condense into 3 points, let's now turn to a Labour and a Tory voice as well. Left-wing, right-wing is probably a slightly better way of putting it, to get some reaction to Sir Keir Starmer's vision. Peter Barnes is a political commentator and strategist, and Scarlett Maguire as well is a former advisor to the Labour Party and a political writer. Scarlett, I will start with you, if that's all right. People are criticising Sir Keir for being light on the detail.
Look, I think what we have to understand is Labour's not in government, right? Is that what people want to know is that when the next general election comes, where is Labour going? And so what Keir was doing was a direction of travel. Now, when it really mattered last summer that we needed detail, we had detail. It was Keir who first proposed an energy cap, right? It was Keir who proposed a serious tax on the oil and gas companies who were making too much money. That's when you need to do it. Now, what he's saying is, look, this is where we're going, right? First of all, what we're going to do is the only way of levelling up is actually devolving power, is letting more people decide what they're going to do, right? And what we can't do is what he calls sticking plaster solutions, where you're just having it for the next 5 minutes. And so actually, I think it was absolutely right. He did a direction of travel. This is where the Labour Party is taking you.
All right, Scott, I'll go back to you. I'll bring Peter in. Peter Barnes, political commentator and strategist. One thing I thought maybe he's on a bit of a sticky wicket about is him saying he's not going to get the cheque put out, but at the same time, he's also not going to try to introduce stricter rules and regs when it comes to striking. How does he marry those two things up?
Well, fundamentally, you can't. That's Keir Starmer's biggest problem, is that he could promise the world right now, because like you said, they're not in power, but whilst we're talking about direction of government and direction of travel, one thing we also have to realise that this is people's mortgages, this is people's houses, lives and livelihoods. We can't just have this kind of sticking plaster politics whilst then doing the exact same thing. Keir Starmer's offered absolutely no detail, no policy gravitas for about a year now. And then if you even want to go back to when he supposedly had the detail, there was a huge black hole in all his figures that he had to then do a huge U-turn on. So I'm not really sure when people are coming out to say that, Keir Starmer's talking about direction of travel. It just seems to me like he's on Spaghetti Junction.
All right, I will go back to you, Scarlett. Look, undoubtedly, a couple of the biggest issues that are facing people at the moment are the NHS and the small boats crisis. Just starting with the NHS. Look, this is Labour's baby. This is the Labour's sacred cow. How's he going to fix it? What's he said?
OK, so what he said, the first problem with the NHS is there's not enough staff. right? So what he and Wes Streeting, the shadow health person, is they are talking about how they're going to get more staff and keep the staff because people are leaving. I mean, one of the reasons for the nurses' strike in the NHS is not just the pay they're getting, but they are worried about people leaving as they're doing more and more. You know, two jobs are going into one. They are working their guts out. So actually, that's it. The other thing is social care. Boris Johnson, when he got into number 10, said, I have a social care plan. We have yet to see it 3 years on. So what we really need is social care.
OK, look, sorry, Scarlett, just quickly, just to go back on that. So he's not going to pay the staff that much more. He wants to improve the conditions. He says he wants to recruit more. I mean, the Tories want to recruit more. But what is the detail about how he's going to do that?
Well, one of the things is he's going to make the pension scheme better, right. which because at the moment the problem with the pension scheme is it encourages people to leave far too early, and so he's going to make late. And of course, the nurses have to be paid better. Right. I would very much doubt. In fact, I would bet my house that he is not thinking about 19%, but actually he would negotiate with the nurses. And that is what we need, is somebody who will actually go in there and negotiate rather than say, oh, okay. No, it's 2.2% or nothing.
All right, Peter, the other big issue, I suppose, for a lot of people as well, one of the other big issues for a lot of people, is what's going on in the Channel. He said that he wants to crack down on the people smuggling gangs and he wants to speed up the asylum system. We're not hearing too much new stuff there, are we really? I think everyone wants to do that.
Well, we've not heard anything, really, because let's not forget Labour have continually voted against most of the Conservative measures to try and restrict or at least control in some way the Channel boats crossing. They've actively sided against the government on most of this stuff. So somehow they're going to be coming out against this kind of tough on immigration government. I don't understand how you could square that peg. I've absolutely no idea. This is my fundamental problem with Keir Starmer, and it has been for some time. He's saying one thing to one group, he's saying another thing to another group, to do nothing but pursue power. You want to know why we have sticking plaster politics? It's because we've allowed a system like this to continue from oppositions as well as governments. People need detail because this is really important stuff, and we're just not getting from the Labour Party, and I just don't think they're taking any of this seriously.
We are a bit pressed for time, guys. I'm going to try and squeeze one more very quick one in with both of you. Scarlett, is there enough of a point of difference between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak? Because we've had 2 announcements in 2 days. You could stick a Rizzler paper between them.
No, there's a massive point of difference, and one of them is somebody whose government has been in power for 12 years, and they're now trying to fix the things that have been going wrong, and the other person who's going to come in fresh and actually change the country, and that's what we need, is somebody who's going to change the country for the better.
And, Peter, a slightly bigger, zoomed-out picture here now. I described it last night as being led by the Dull Man's Club, are we?
Well, sometimes the Dull Men's Club isn't necessarily the worst thing to be led by, but I actually do think the government and the country, actually wants some more bold leadership. I don't really see that from Keir Starmer. I mean, he's nothing but a nice haircut and an expensive suit and not much in between. And you can basically argue the same thing about Rishi Sunak. I want both political parties to put radical agendas forward. There's nothing wrong in trying to be bold and trying new things, because I think that's the only way we're going to jumpstart the country.
All right, look, both of you, thank you very much. I'm bang on time as well. Cheers, guys. Lovely stuff. Scarlett Maguire there, who is, of course, a former advisor to the Labour Party and political writer, and Peter Barnes, political commentator and strategist. There we go, just reacting to Keir Starmer's big speech today. I can't help but feel as though when it came to Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, it was like that scene out of the thick of it, isn't it? That fabulous BBC sitcom, would you call it, series? Well, the big announcement is that there isn't a big announcement, but there we go. Anyway, you're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up, we're on a highway to a greener future. Or are we? Sales of new cars have sunk to the lowest level in 3 decades, but electric cars have overtaken diesel in the popularity charts. Also, we are being urged, potentially, to drive slower to save the planet. Will you slow down for the polar bears? That's what I want to know. Hear your thoughts coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Critically, I want your sibling rivalry stories. This is in light of Harry whinging about William yet again. gbviews at gbnews.uk. Now, though, quick break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. It's 3:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB Newsroom. In his first speech of the new year, Sir Keir Starmer's promised a decade of national renewal if Labour comes to power. Conservative Party chairman Nadine Zahawi has called his speech a desperate relaunch attempt. The Labour leader set out plans today to modernise central government. He also claimed the Prime Minister has no ambition for the future.
You saw it yesterday from the Prime Minister. Commentary without solution. More promises, more platitudes. No ambition to take us forward. No sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries. 7 million on waiting lists and rising.
The government's proposing new laws requiring minimum service levels during public sector strikes. The announcement comes amid a third consecutive day of rail disruption as drivers from 15 companies walk out, with some areas having no trains running at all. ASLEF's General Secretary claims the laws could backfire, prompting workers to stage longer periods of industrial action. But Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the new laws are necessary for safety, especially within the NHS.
If, for example, you've got somebody who has a heart attack, maybe a stroke, the idea that there may not be an ambulance coming because there's a strike on, I think is unacceptable. We're not proposing to go the full hog. Other countries, parts of America, Canada, Australia, they have legislation which bans those blue lights entirely from going on strike. We're not proposing that. I think it's very reasonable what we're suggesting.
And Prince Harry reportedly claims in his autobiography Spare that he was attacked by his brother over his marriage to Meghan Markle. A leaked extract published in The Guardian alleges Prince William grabbed Harry and knocked him to the floor in 2019. It's also been revealed the Duke of Sussex refers to his brother in the book as his arch nemesis. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome back, everybody. You'll be pleased to know we're taking a little bit of a break from the old Harry and Meghan stuff and the Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak stuff to talk about the electric car stuff. New sales of cars in the UK have hit a 30-year low, according to new figures. 1.61 million new cars were registered in the UK in 2022, the lowest figure since 1992. However, sales of electric cars have soared, accounting for a fifth of all new sales and surpassing diesel vehicles for the first time in market share to be the second most purchased car type after petrol. It is, of course, bad news for all of those child slave labourers who have to dig out the components from various different African mine shafts. Also today, there are reports some MPs are calling on the government to reduce motorway speed limits from 70 miles an hour to just 64 miles per hour to reduce transport emissions and our dependence on oil imports. With me now is Jim Holder, the editorial director of What Car. Fantastic stuff. So people are shifting to electric to save the planet, are they?
I think there are many reasons why people have been buying electric cars. Certainly the environmental impact is one of them. There's also been some financial incentives that have driven people towards purchasing them. I think increasingly they're seeing that they can be a positive in their life. It's not a switch that necessarily comes with compromises. There are advantages as well as disadvantages to electric vehicles, and I think people are increasingly buying into those concepts.
Is it now going to prove more expensive to own an electric car? I'm just wondering, with things like energy costs, for example, and people have essentially been subsidised into getting them. Those subsidies, one would imagine, would stop one day. Do you think people are maybe being conned?
Yeah, well, I think it's certainly true that the government has already announced it will reduce and then remove the subsidies. Eventually, from 2025, it said it will start taxing via road tax owners of electric vehicles. So certainly the costs there are going up, and you're absolutely right. We all know about the cost of living crisis and the rising energy prices. I think what we can say with some confidence is that if you can charge your electric car at home rather than using typically more expensive public chargers, you still have a cost advantage on your side. The most efficient electric car will cost something around 7 or 8p per mile, even on a 35p per kilowatt tariff to run. That's some way cheaper than even the most efficient petrol or diesel car. So there are still advantages to have, but absolutely you're right, some of them have been eroded by the cost of living crisis as we face into it.
I'm quite concerned about how sustainable, in a human sense, electric cars actually are. I'm reading articles here in front of me now. Congo child slave labour for your electric car. Pretty horrific images of children being forced down mines to dig out bits that are relevant for the manufacturing of these cars. Do you think actually it's morally unconscionable to own one of these things?
I don't think it's morally uncomfortable now. I think there have been issues, and I think they have largely been tackled. I think we have to trust in these major manufacturers and the crisis that they would face into were they to be exposed to be unethically sourcing these materials. So while I think it's really important that you raise it, I think it's really important that it's monitored. I think the kind of brands we're talking about, they can't risk those associations, and they can't risk taking advantage of the sort of situations and images that you're talking about. So I think the battery industry and the mining industry have come an awful long way since those sort of headlines were relevant. I think you're absolutely right to raise it, and we should continue to monitor it. We don't want another Dieselgate where it emerged that the fuel of choice was negative. But I think the concerns are exaggerated by many parties.
Just quickly, ironically, given what I'm about to ask you, we're being asked to slow down to save the planet. So to go from 70 miles an hour to 64 miles an hour, being able to drive at 70 miles an hour on a motorway would be a fine thing these days. I mean, I was driving back quite late one night and the motorway was empty, 4 lanes of empty motorway, and the big signs up, do 50, do 50. Why? I mean, so we're being told to do 64 miles an hour so that we don't kill any more polar bears.
Yeah, well, look, there's 2 ways of looking at it. You're absolutely right. It would be lovely if our average motorway speeds could be 70 miles an hour. I think we'd all celebrate that. I think the flip side and the point people are trying to make is that if you do drive slower, you get exponentially better fuel economy. So, at 64 miles an hour, you're probably saving 10-15% on your fuel, but only arriving a few minutes later. A couple of extra miles an hour really doesn't take much off in terms of time of anything other than the very longest journey. But the point you make is true. Why fiddle with the speed limits when there are much bigger advantages from trying to free up our roads, trying to get them flowing more freely, and all sorts of other things that we could perhaps do as initiatives that would have more impact on the environment.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I am quite jaded. I know that I've got a ticket today for turning right. My sat-nav told me to turn right, and just as I did it, I saw the sign that said no right turn. Obviously not updated my maps, but anyway, there we go. Enough about me. Jim, thank you very much. Jim Holder there, the editorial director of What Car, reacting initially to the fact that apparently electric car sales are going through the roof, and you're also being asked to drive slower. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. After the break, more reaction as Prince Harry justifies speaking out against the royal family.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Yes, Prince Harry is claiming that William charged at him, grabbed him round the neck, broke his necklace and pushed him over into a dog's bowl. The dog bowl smashed, and also as well planted the seed of thought in his mind that he had to wear that Nazi uniform as well. It's all rather pathetic stuff. Is the damage the Duke of Sussex is inflicting on his own family and the royals irreparable? I want to know your sibling rivalries, your sibling scraps. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Oh, and surely now he can't come to the coronation. Now we're going to have a break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Back now to the big royal rumble brewing as more revelations have come from Prince Harry as he takes aim at his brother Prince William and our future king. Of course, the Duke of Sussex has claimed that he the Prince and Princess of Wales encouraged him to dress up as a Nazi. And these are just things you never thought you'd read out on national television, isn't it? They thought his brother had wanted him to dress up as a Nazi and howled with laughter when they saw him in the costume. His remarks in his new memoir, Spare, look back at when he was the age of 20, the tender age of 20. He couldn't have known any better. No one knows at the age of 20 that you shouldn't wear a Nazi uniform in public. Anyway, the Prince sparked widespread international outrage when he was pictured on the front of the Sun wearing a swastika armband as a Nazi soldier from the Afrika Korps. It's not the only revelation in the new book, is it? And we've also got more information of what we can expect from his interview with ITV as the Duke of Sussex looks to defend his actions in speaking out and essentially trashing his own family.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Some people will say you have railed against invasions of your privacy all your life. But the accusation will be, here are you invading the privacy of your most nearest and dearest without permission. That'll be the accusation.
That'll be the accusation from the people that don't understand or don't want to believe that my family have been briefing the press.
If you're invited to the coronation, will you come?
There's a lot that can happen between now and then. But, you know, the door is always open. The ball is in their court. There's a lot to be discussed, and I really hope that they are willing to sit down and talk about it.
Do you still believe in the monarchy?
Yes.
Do you believe you'll play a part in its future?
I don't know.
No. I'm asking, is Prince Harry right to go public and speak out against his brother, Prince William? To share his thoughts, I'm joined now by the historian and licensed lay minister for the Church of England. It's Martin Whittock. Martin, thank you very, very much. What do you make of the idea now that Prince Harry is coming out and basically saying, William ripped my necklace?
Well, like many people, I've been reading excerpts from Spanish editions of Spare and so on and so forth that have been leaking into the media today. And yeah, like yourself, we've heard all these kind of accusations, and also accusations about the fact briefings against him and Meghan, whether that was during the time when they had a joint comms team or went to separate comms. Couldn't quite work that out from the bits that I read. Basically, it's really, really sad. And my feeling is, having seen the history of what happened between Prince Charles, as he then was, and Princess Diana, as she then was, as they played out a family breakdown over the media airways, I just think it's absolutely tragic seeing this happen again. And clearly, I'm not in a position to comment on all the detailed accusations, but I feel this is no way to conduct a family disagreement.
Well, it's not.
Not just royal, and any family disagreement.
One thing I think you are qualified to comment on as a licensed lay minister for the Church of England, King Charles, the head of the church, should he not have a duty now then, in his religious capacity, to forgive, to move on, to seek reconciliation, or not?
I mean, as a Christian, I think that should always be rooted in every relationship. Absolutely, the need for forgiveness and reconciliation. But I still would emphasise playing out these sensitive things in the public domain by megaphone diplomacy is a really big mistake. And I think what's happening through the Netflix interviews, the interviews before that, the coming out of Spare and so on, is actually just fueling a situation where the royal family are not able, because of etiquette, to respond, what everyone thinks about the details of the accusations. And yet what it does is it just simply escalates further and further. So yeah, there is always an emphasis, in my opinion, on forgiveness, reconciliation moving forward. But that's not going to happen while this very sensitive situation is played out in the full glare of the media. No, I think it's really sad and a big mistake. Big mistake.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, anyone who watches this show will know exactly where I stand on this particular issue. I'm not a massive fan of Prince Harry. But, I do have to ask, and forgive me for asking this, would King Charles be a bad Christian if he didn't put his arm around his own son and say, right, look, I'm going to issue, if this is what it takes to shut you up and to stop this and to make sure we can set an example of the family to the nation and the nation's church that I am the head of, would he be a bad Christian if he doesn't do that?
Well, certainly, obviously, the final analysis, that's between King Charles and God. But nevertheless, if he was phoning me this afternoon, and it's unlikely, I've checked my phone, but if he were phoning me this afternoon, I would say go the extra mile, reach out, no matter how hurt you feel, no matter how betrayed you feel, because sometimes it's in those extraordinary reachings out that miracles of grace happen, even in situations like this. So yeah, I can't comment on where he stands with his faith. I can't comment where he stands before God. But as a human being, I would say to him, and as a fellow Christian, I would say, please reach out, regardless of wrongs done, regardless of how slighted you feel. Because sometimes one has to do this. In Jesus' phrase, go the extra mile, do the thing that you don't think should be expected of you. But on the other hand, I would also say to Harry, no more megaphone diplomacy. Please, it doesn't help.
Well, this
but we
is
seem
it.
to be well down that road. Well down that road.
Clearly, Harry is incredibly easily led. I mean, no one could tell me to wear a Nazi uniform and go out with a swastika armband, and even if they thought it was hilarious, I like to think at some point I would have second thoughts about that. So clearly Harry is incredibly easily led. He's claiming that it was William's idea. But can I just ask you quite quickly, Martin, again, you know, licensed lay minister for the Church of England, if I came to you for a bit of advice, I said, oh, you know, I've married this woman, and ever since I've married her, I've lost all my friends, I've lost my brother, I've fallen out with my father, I'm feeling a bit lost. Do you think at any point you might say you might have married the wrong woman?
I think before I said that, hopefully I'd say you need counselling, you need to sit down together, you need to talk this through. Obviously, it could well be in a situation that you begin to think, gosh, this is a disastrous situation. But to start with, I am always one of those people who reach out and say, can this be saved? Can it be rescued? Let's try that first. Let's try it first.
Look, thank you very, very much. That's great to have your insight and your input. I really appreciate you humouring me as well there with that. As Martin Whittock there, who's lay minister for the Church of England, reacting to Harry and his latest interjection. I'm just being told this in my ear now. Apparently, there are reports that are coming out as people pick through more of his memoir, etc., more of his book. Apparently, anyway, reportedly, Prince Harry has admitted to using cocaine in his book. All right, fair enough. Well, there we go. We'll get more on that, supposedly, if it really matters. Anyway, Labour says that it opposes the government's reported anti-strike legislation that could result in employers being able to sue unions, and that the party would likely repeal any such bill if it wins the next election. During a speech earlier, Sir Keir Starmer claimed that the Tories' plans to keep minimum service levels during strike action wouldn't work. Trade unions have vowed to legally contest the plans, raising the question of whether the government should have the power to curtail strike action. Here's the Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, on those plans for a minimum service arrangement, basically limits to the amount of strike action that you can take.
In point of fact, I'd rather we never have to go down this route. In the most recent strikes, for example, with ambulances, you had the Royal College of Nursing, who, in the nurses' strike, did agree at a national level what the minimum safety level would be. But with the ambulances, that was left to a postcode lottery, effectively. And I think it's that's unacceptable. So what I'm hoping is that across the economy, because this would apply in lots of different areas of the economy, I'm hoping actually that unions and the employers can get together and do sensible things in order to guarantee a minimum safety or service level in each different area. That would always be the preference. What we're going to do is take the powers to impose that if required.
Well, that's Grant Shapps there, just discussing all of that. With me now is Christopher Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the IEA, and Rob Williams, a Socialist Party industrial organiser and trade unionist. Both of you, thank you very, very much. Rob, are you a bit disappointed? Because Keir Starmer says, essentially, reading between the lines, that he's going to let you carry on striking, but he's not going to give any pay rises out. He's not got a chequebook.
Well, I mean, that is wrong, isn't it? Keir Starmer should, if he wants to set himself out in opposition to the Tories, then what workers are demanding is nothing more than to have an income that keeps pace with spiralling prices. But doesn't it say everything about this Tory government? A year ago, 800 workers for P&O were sacked brutally, supposedly illegally. Nothing at all has happened to them. And now their response to the cost of living crisis is to try and make what is already the most undemocratic, restrictive anti-union legislation in Western Europe even more restrictive. I tell you what, workers are not going to take it.
OK, fair enough. But I suppose his argument will be we can keep striking, but you'll all go bankrupt. Christopher Snowdon, now Head of Lifestyle Economics at the IEA. What did Keir Starmer actually say of substance today?
I don't know. I didn't see a speech.
Good. OK. All right, fair enough. Do you actually believe, though, that maybe he should be getting the chequebook out for workers?
A little bit. I mean, I think rather than talking about banning people from striking, which should always be a last resort, I mean, the government should be negotiating a bit. If you take the nurses, for example, obviously they're not expecting to get 19%. It's clearly a negotiating position. In Scotland, I think the nurses have accepted a pay rise of 7.5%. So rather than just immediately threaten to ban people from striking, which effectively means forcing them to work, which is not a particularly liberal thing to do, I think the government should be getting around the table a bit more with all these people, whether it's the posties or the ambulance drivers, the nurses, the train drivers. You know, the train ticket prices are going up, I think, by 6%. This year. Why not offer the train drivers and the train staff 6% as well? The private sector, roughly speaking, is getting nominal pay growth of 6%, which is a pay cut in real terms, of course, because we have double-digit inflation. But it's more than what the nurses are being offered. I think it's a lot more than what the train workers are being offered. You know, why not just offer that? Say, look, the private sector is getting 6%. We're offering you 6%. If you don't want to take that, fine. But I think you would find that the general public would be a bit happier if that was the offer.
Well, on that note about public popularity, I suppose, Rob, I'll throw it back to you. Rob Williams, Socialist Party industrial organiser. If the strikes were as popular with the public as the likes of Mick Lynch and co like to claim, then Keir Starmer would be supporting them, wouldn't he? But he wants to win an election. He obviously realises that people don't back people like you calling for a strike.
I don't think that's the case, actually. I think what it is with Keir Starmer is because he thinks he could become the Prime Minister very soon, he doesn't want to pay those workers those pay rises going forward. And unfortunately, that does reveal that the Labour leadership, the Blairite, Starmerite Labour leadership, is not sufficiently on board with working class people. But the point is, you raise here about minimum, or the Tories are raising about minimum service. Why is it that workers haven't got minimum standards? Why is it that we haven't got pay rises that keep pace with inflation, with the energy prices? And then what you have is, you know, you've got the Tories talking about the employers getting around the table. For millions and millions of public sector workers, the Tories are the employers. And look, everyone knows that they're behind the Royal Mail and the rail disputes anyway. Okay. So the point is that the biggest employer in Britain is the Tory government. And they should be getting around the table and giving workers a pay rise. But I warn you this, I warn the Tories, if they go down the road of more anti-union legislation, then workers are going to take action collectively against that.
All right, Christopher, does the government, whichever colour they happen to be, does the government not have a duty to try to limit strike action? Because it's costing our economy billions of pounds, isn't it, these strikes? Supposedly the hospitality sector lost £1.5 billion in December alone. Is it not economic terrorism?
Well, yeah, but where do you draw the line with that? I mean, when do you know, a postman, for example, should we force a postman to strike? Personally, it doesn't really bother me that the postmen are going on strike. I don't mind getting a letter a day or two late. I think, in fact, they should probably go back to work because I don't think they have the capacity to bring the country to a standstill. Ambulance drivers, nurses, on the other hand, very easily. You know, they've got public support, and they're doing an extremely important job. Should we force ambulance drivers, you know, to go to work? In other words, ban striking? Quite possibly. Other countries do that. I think you can genuinely say they are an emergency service. But I think there's a slippery slope here, and the answer, as I said to start with, is to actually have some serious negotiations. People can't expect their pay to rise in line with inflation. The private sector isn't, but they could be offered a bit more than 2%.
OK, all right, good stuff. Well, look, thank you very much, both of you. Christopher Snowdon, the head of lifestyle economics at the IEA. Rob Williams, the Socialist Party industrial organiser and trade unionist, reacting to that kind of odd statement, really, in a way, by Keir Starmer, that he's not going to limit the strikes, but also at the same time he's not got a chequebook to pay the workers more. So basically, just endless strikes. Anyway, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up, loads more on the revelations of Prince Harry. I've just seen something, actually, by the way, that might shock you in relation to what's happened in Afghanistan with him. Stay tuned.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back, everybody. It's just gone 4 o'clock. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Now, coming your way this hour, more of Harry's truth, as the Prince claims that he was physically attacked by his brother, the Prince of Wales, and knocked to the floor during a furious confrontation over the Duchess of Sussex. I have also got a little bit of a clip for you, I believe. Some trailer has emerged of his interview with ITV, and he's speaking out against the royal family, all of that stuff. But look, I really want to know, is the damage that the Duke of Sussex is inflicting on his own family and the royals irreparable? It's also worth you noting that apparently this book is now out in Spain, which means that some rather fruity details are emerging live as we're on air, which I'm getting in front of me. We're going to talk about them shortly. Anyway, from a royal rumble to a vision for Britain's future from the leader of the opposition. During a speech earlier, Sir Keir Starmer signalled that his party would become the party of take back control and pledged to modernise British politics. Was his rallying cry a vote winner for you? What did he actually say? And would you welcome a lowering of speed limits for a brighter, greener future? Reports today that the governments are looking at plans to cut motorway speed limits to a cool 64 miles an hour to curb the impact of cars on the environment. Let me know what you think. Keep your sibling scrap stories coming in as well. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I am reading them. It's making me laugh a lot. We're going to get some of them out on the telly very shortly. GBviews at gbnews.uk. The worst scraps you've ever had, your brother or sister.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 4. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has promised a decade of national renewal if Labour comes to power. In his first speech of the new year, the Labour leader sets out plans to modernise central government. A day after Rishi Sunak outlined his 5 promises, Sir Keir claimed the Prime Minister doesn't have the solutions to the country's problems.
You saw it yesterday from the Prime Minister. Commentary without solution. More promises, more platitudes, no ambition to take us forward, no sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries. 7 million on waiting lists and rising.
Well, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says Labour has worked against finding solutions.
They've opposed our desire to bring in limitations on the abuse of unions, which causing strikes that are hurting ordinary working families. He stood against our attempts to control illegal migration and get a grip of those people smuggling gangs. All the things that we've tried to do to bring real change, positive change to this country, the Labour Party have opposed time and time again, and all we saw in that speech was the same old from Labour.
Leaked extracts from Prince Harry's autobiography Spare accuse his brother Prince William of attacking him. The pages, which have been published in The Guardian, allege William grabbed Harry by the collar and knocked him to the ground in 2019, leaving him with a visible injury. Harry says the argument was regarding his marriage to Meghan Markle and claims William called her difficult, rude and abrasive. Buckingham Palace has refused to comment on the reports. The government is proposing new laws requiring a minimum service during public sector strikes. The announcement comes amid a third consecutive day of rail disruption as drivers from 15 companies walk out, with some areas having no trains running at all. ASLEF's General Secretary claims the laws could backfire, prompting workers to stage longer periods of industrial action. Mick Whelan also says further strikes are inevitable unless there's a breakthrough in the long-running dispute over pay. But Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the new laws are necessary for safety, especially within the NHS.
If, for example, you've got somebody who has a heart attack, maybe a stroke, the idea that there may not be an ambulance coming because there's a strike on, I think is unacceptable. We're not proposing to go the full hog. Other countries, parts of America, Canada, Australia, they have legislation which bans those blue lights entirely from going on strike. We're not proposing that. I think it's very reasonable what we're suggesting.
6 women have been arrested following the death of a 1-year-old boy at a nursery in Dudley. West Midlands police say 3 of them were arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter last month and have since been released on bail. A further 3 women were taken into custody yesterday, 2 on suspicion of corporate manslaughter and 1 on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. It's unclear how the boy died. A British tourist has been shot dead in Jamaica in what police there think may have been a contract killing ordered in the UK. 33-year-old Sean Patterson from West London was shot multiple times by the pool of his holiday villa in St James. The personal trainer was on his first visit to the island to meet his father. Jamaican police say 1 man's been taken into custody as they work to continue on the case with UK authorities. And the government's decided it won't go ahead with a plan to privatise Channel 4. The idea to sell the broadcaster was announced during Boris Johnson's government. Former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries had said government ownership was holding the channel back. But her successor, Michelle Donnellan, has decided the broadcaster shouldn't be sold. She instead proposed other reforms, including greater commercial flexibility. Up to 60,000 mourners are thought to have gathered in St Peter's Square at the Vatican this morning for the funeral of former Pope Benedict XVI. The Mass was led by Pope Francis. It's the first time in 600 years that the current Pope has buried his predecessor. Benedict XVI is being laid to rest in a crypt beneath St Peter's Basilica. That's according to his wishes. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome back. Now, big revelations today as we get our first look at Prince Harry's upcoming memoir, Spare, with leaked extracts taking direct aim at his brother, our future king, Prince William. The Duke of Sussex refers to his brother, the Prince of Wales, in his book as his arch-nemesis, claims that William physically attacked him and the Prince and Princess of Wales encouraged him to wear the infamous Nazi uniform in his 20s. Well, this afternoon, a new clip with the US broadcaster Good Morning America has been released as Harry spoke ahead of the release of his book. I think we can have a little look and a listen to that now.
There's a quote in his book where you refer to your brother as your beloved brother and arch nemesis. Strong words. What did you mean by that?
There has always been this competition between us, weirdly. I think it really plays into, or is played by, the heir spare.
Well, there we go. Lots for us to talk about, including some quite startling revelations that have just dropped. And here to pick them apart with us is our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, we spoke a bit about the Nazi uniform. We spoke a little bit about the old dog bowl smashing fighty stuff. Well, there's more now.
Yeah, we're now going to have to talk about Prince Harry's drug use, something which he apparently admits in this new memoir. Now, I must stress that GB News does not have a copy of Spare, but Sky News has released what they say is Prince Harry admitting he took cocaine aged 17. So I'm just going to read out what Prince Harry has apparently written in his book. He says, "Of course, I had been taking cocaine at that time. At someone's house during a hunting weekend, I was offered a line, and since then I had consumed some more. It wasn't very funny, and it didn't make me feel especially happy, as seems to happen to others, but it did make me feel different, and that was my main objective, to feel to be different. I was a 17-year-old willing to try almost anything that would alter the pre-established order. At least that's what I was trying to convince myself of."
Okay.
So we know there have been reports that Prince Harry, when he was a lot younger, had been involved in taking illegal substances. It's understood that his father, the then Prince Charles, essentially ordered him to go to rehab, but now we have it here. It looks like, if the reports are to be believed, in black and white in his novel, that Prince Harry has admitted to taking cocaine when he was 17 years old.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I know that we do stick it to Prince Harry quite a bit on this. I'm not sure that many people will be, A, hugely surprised at him taking drugs, or B, that bothered, really. I'm not sure. I don't think many people would. There are also a couple of reports coming out about what he did on his second tour of Afghanistan.
Yes, if you remember, Prince Harry did undertake 2 tours of Afghanistan, the first of which he had to be evacuated out pretty quickly because a foreign publication, newspaper, broke the embargo, which was agreements with the palace and the newspapers, so the Taliban didn't know where he was, and therefore he would become a target. He was hugely distressed and upset that he had to be pulled out early. Now, on the second tour, according to, I think it's The Times, The Times, Harry's forthcoming book, he has reportedly revealed that he killed 25 Taliban fighters during his second tour of duty in Afghanistan. I don't have any more details on that, but he says, Prince Harry says, according to these reports, that he killed 25 Taliban fighters in Afghanistan when he was on tour.
To be honest, if Harry decided to make a film out of this, already we've got fights with his brother, a Nazi uniform, cocaine use and killing terrorists. So, you know, I suppose you could argue it might be a blockbuster hit. Anyway, look, Cameron, thank you very much, our royal correspondent there. Cameron Walker will be keeping you abreast of a fast-moving picture when it comes to Prince Harry and his new memoir, Spare. But there we go. Loads of you have been getting in touch. I wanted to know a bit about your sibling rivalries, because initially, anyway, when we first started the show, before, you know, the whole shooting Taliban fighters and taking cocaine thing broke, it was all about him and William having a bit of a scrap, and William maybe physically, well, I don't know, assaulting him, you could say, I don't know. Anyway, the palace won't be commenting on that. But I was asking you, what were your sort of sibling scraps, OK? And Kim's been on. My big brother shot me in the leg with a pellet gun. Oh, grief. She says, this is when they were children. Pushed me in a pushchair race. I tumbled out of the pushchair. But she says they're still the best of friends and they love each other. Dee has been on. My brother sliced my lip open with a knife from a doll's tea set about 60 years ago. She says she's calling Netflix now so she can get a multi-million-pound deal on that. And a final one here, no name on this one. Oh, yes, there is. Kerr's been on 63 years ago. His brother, oh, grief, Kerr, my heart goes out to you, mate. My brother fired an arrow at me from a crossbow, albeit with a sucker on the end. He says it still made him cry, but he does also say, grow up, Harry. So there we go. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Keep your sibling scraps coming in. Anyway, moving on. Labour has promised to give fresh powers to local communities and take it away from Westminster, as Sir Keir Starmer pledged that his party will take back control. During his first major speech of 2023 earlier today, the Labour leader said his party would bring forward a take back control bill, which I think might be top trolling, given where the Labour Party stands on things. There we go. That would devolve power from London to communities across the country, granting new control over employment, support, transport, energy, housing and a host of other areas as well. He also took aim at the Tories and claimed that if Labour were elected, he'd seek to implement a new way of governing.
We need to push forward and rise to the moment. Prove we can be a bold reforming government. Show not just what the Tories have done to Britain, but the Britain that Labour can build. A fairer, greener, more dynamic country with an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. And a politics which trust communities with the power to control their destiny. A new government and a new way of governing. Britain needs both. And with Labour, Britain will get both.
Well, there we go. That's Sir Keir Starmer there in front of what does appear to be a transformer. But our political reporter, Catherine Forster, joins me in the studio, as well as our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Catherine, I'll start with you. You were there. This devolution side of thing, I'm quite intrigued by. So is he essentially saying local areas are going to basically have control over the way that they govern more, even more?
Effectively, yes. It's like Labour's answer to levelling up, isn't it? Because, of course, Boris Johnson made a huge play of levelling up. It was one of the reasons he got elected with an 80-seat majority, saying we understand that people in the regions feel they've been left behind. It was the driver behind the Brexit vote. Keir Starmer was saying that in terms of geographical inequality, Britain is the worst in Europe and that power is centralised here more than anywhere else and it's not working. So he really has jumped on this take back control, that leave slogan, and is turning it around to hopefully use it to his advantage, saying, we get it, and people voted to leave the EU, but it was also about the fact that they felt they didn't have enough control, that locally they didn't have the opportunities, there weren't the jobs, there weren't the opportunities, and that they want to, now it's not clear how they're going to do it yet, but it will be laid out in this Take Back Control bill, give much more power back to local communities, local councils, etc.
That's interesting stuff, and no doubt that'll be picked apart as we get more detail on it as well. Liam Halligan there with your economics and business hat on. What stood out for you from Keir Starmer's speech?
Well, the next general election, Patrick, will be likely in 2024, unless there's a snap election. And I think what's going to happen this year, and we've just had the starting gun, is a kind of pre-election framing of both parties laying out their offer, as they say, to the electorate. And I thought with both Starmer's speech today and Rishi Sunak's speech yesterday, they were long on rhetoric but short on actual details. I thought a lot of the promises that Rishi Sunak laid out yesterday will probably be met anyway. Like inflation will probably be half what it is by the end of this year, unless there's some massive, escalation in conflict between Russia and the Western world, in which case Sunak can just blame the Russians. Waiting lists are likely to come down because they're at a massive record high of 7.5 million, and now the NHS isn't just a national COVID service as it was during lockdown. And I agree with Catherine picking up on that phrase, take back control, because Starmer has got a problem in the Red Wall. Labour has got a problem in the Red Wall. There's a lot of Red Wall voters didn't like the way the Labour Party and particularly Starmer, when he was Secretary of State for leaving the European Union or not leaving the European Union, tried to kind of lawyer his way out of the Brexit vote. So by taking the rhetoric of the Brexit camp, take back control, as Catherine said, and turning it into a kind of post-Brexit set of policies to be laid out at some time, while also saying on the side which he is, we are not going to reverse Brexit. That's a very important thing that Labour have said. He's trying to regain trust in the Red Wall.
Yes, interesting stuff. Well, both of you, thank you very much again. Short and sweet, yet again, but no doubt you'll be in next hour, hopefully. Anyway, that is our political reporter, Catherine Forster, and economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, reacting to Keir Starmer, I forgot his name now, Keir Starmer's speech earlier on today. Let's get the thoughts of Stephen Carlton Woods. It's been a long week. A political commentator in Manchester. Is this just another levelling up pledge, do you think? Do you think it'll actually pay off?
Well, I think Labour's run out of ideas and they've had to steal or plagiarise from Cameron and Osborne, haven't they, with this? I just think what Starmer was saying was very flat and very little detail in what he was saying. And I think it's they're in a desperate situation. And I think that the way Labour are, they feel as though if they don't win the next election, they'll never, ever get power again. So I think it's a very worrying time for them.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as someone who comes from the kind of quotes-unquote red wall as well, I'm just not sure either candidate goes down particularly well up there. I mean, is it like the Northerners are basically being asked to choose between a rock and a hard place with these two?
Well, a lot of people I speak to are still very upset at the fact that Boris Johnson is not the Prime Minister after the country went to the polls and voted for Boris. And we've ended up with Rishi, who was not elected by the membership. But saying that, he's between the rock and a hard place now. He's got to deliver. And his speech yesterday was taking the 5 most important things for the nation, with inflation, debt, the economy, NHS waiting lists, and immigration. And they're the big 5 things. If you look on social media or anything like that, they're the things that people are going on about. At least it's addressed what the country are thinking and saying at the moment. So Keir Starmer this morning just reeled off a load of different lists and went in all sorts of directions and contradicting himself a couple of times, I'd say.
OK, well, go on. Why do you think he's contradicting himself? What bit stood out for you on the detail? You know, if Keir Starmer's maybe been slightly light on the detail, can you give us some?
Well, he wants to make all these changes without spending a great deal of money, and we've always seen Labour's broke the bank every time they've governed. So, and they're supporting the strikes really at the moment, even though he's not supporting the strikes. Many of his MPs are out on picket lines and backing up the strikers. How do you make all these people happy with not breaking the bank once again?
Yeah,
we've got to.
I wonder on that.
Sorry.
I wonder on that. When I had Khalid Mahmood on, who's a Labour MP, he actually said he would back a general strike. So I just wonder whether or not Keir Starmer, if he does get into government at some point in the next couple of years, is going to have backbench revolts over things like workers' pay, etc. And that could be a bit of an issue for him. Not too much when it comes to the small boats crisis as well.
No, well, I think it's a very... People have short memories, and this is the problem. It's a very dangerous time. It will cost a lot of money for Labour to govern again, as it always has in the past. And if people forget how Labour have governed in the past, it's going to be a very rocky road in the future for the next term. But at the end of the day, we're still paying for things like the lockdowns with COVID and things like that, and that come at a tremendous cost. So you've got to address these things, and for the unions now to take people out on strike after they were supported by the government as well financially, it's just a kick in the teeth for ordinary working people.
I wonder whether or not people in the Red Wall as well are looking at it now and going, I don't particularly resonate with Keir Starmer. He doesn't appear to have much of a human touch. Very similar stuff with Rishi Sunak, I think. Maybe it is fertile ground for a new party. But, Stephen, we'll have to park that conversation and pick it up at another point. Stephen Carlton Woods there, political commentator in Manchester. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, the founder of Fair Fuel UK with his thoughts on what looks like another push for eco-highways, because sales of new cars have sunk to the lowest level in 3 decades, but electric cars have overtaken diesel in their popularity charts. I've got a lot of questions about electric cars, to be honest with you. I'm going to be putting a lot of them to the leader of Fair Fuel UK. There's also plans in the pipeline to reduce speed limits on our motorways, so down from 70 to 64 miles an hour. You'd be lucky if you managed to get up to 64 miles an hour on some of the motorways these days. And a big debate this hour, a big debate. Was Prince Harry right to go public about his fight with his brother, Prince William? And I will share your views from the inbox very, very shortly. I want your sibling scrap stories, some absolute gold in the inbox here, some of which I'm not allowed to broadcast, of course. GB Views on gbnews.uk.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, plans to not only cut emissions on our roads, but also your speed too. Slow down, everyone, for the sake of the ice caps. Reports today that the government could consider cutting the speed limit on motorways from 70 miles an hour to 64 miles an hour as they look to cut emissions and the UK's dependence on oil imports. Well, the revelations coincide with new figures released today which show that electric cars accounted for a fifth of all new car sales in the UK. Now, it represents a steady rise in the proportion of electric vehicles being sold ahead of the government's deadline of 2030, which mandates that all new cars sold from that point onwards must be electric. Critics, however, have raised numerous issues with the plan, including the fact that in the UK, fewer than 40,000 charging points actually exist, apparently. They're saying it's an unrealistic target. Joining me now is Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel UK campaign. Howard, thank you very much. Are people being conned into buying an electric car?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big... Let's be clear, electric vehicles are incredible pieces of technology. They really are incredible, but they're not practical. They don't go as far. You get this range anxiety, the actually cradle to grave from in terms of production process against an internal combustion engine. There's not much difference in terms of the emissions.
Well, this is the key point, right? So the electric cars only really make sense if they save people money and save the planet. Do they do either of those things?
No, they do not. It's ridiculous. It's all virtual signalling BS. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm sorry if I said that
right. It's not the worst thing I'll say today. Carry on.
But the thing is, the whole reason I wrote the article in The Sun today was to point out that we've only got 6-7 years before we are told, and we have been told by the government, it's a mandate, an edict. It's not in legislation yet, so that's why we're still fighting it, is that we cannot buy a new diesel petrol car in 2030. And that's the issue, the reason why I'm working with The Sun to actually get some realisation that the 2030 ban is going to cost us a fortune. I recently commissioned the CBR report, the economic gurus, who wrote an article or produced a report which simply said that the actual benefits of the 2030 ban will cost 5 times to achieve. So
is this to each driver? Or just in terms of for the nation?
To the economy, but it means each driver. For every household till 2050, then the net zero target, it's going to cost every household £1,000.
I mean, it is shocking stuff. And also with energy costs going up, electricity costs coming up, one would have thought that actually, all right, when I go and... Full disclosure, I do have a diesel, right? When I go and fill that up now, it makes my eyes water sometimes. But is that just going to be the same if I got an electric car?
Well, this is the point. The actual cost of actually electricity to the charge, especially in public charging points, is huge. There's not much difference. And from your point of view, and don't be ashamed to admit you drive a diesel, they are superb cars. I don't know if it's a Euro...
I like the noise it makes.
The Euro 6 diesels are very clean. If we're talking diesels of 15 to 20 years ago, they were foul things. They were passing out a lot of things. But we were told to drive a diesel. Do you remember?
Yes.
Year 2000. And that's why I've actually headed this article that I think EVs are going to be the Betamax of the future.
Yeah, but also it's how we actually get some of the components for our electric vehicles, and some of that appears to be child slave labour in Africa.
Yeah, all of the rare earth metals like cobalt and lithium do come from countries that do exhibit that sort of mining. But also, China is buying up every single mine in the flipping world.
Yeah.
So actually, and they will have control of all the supplies of lithium and cobalt. And this is the sort of thing that is not being taken on board by the government. All this is going to do is going to cost the economy. It's going to damage the economy hard. And this is the big thing. There is clean fuel technology evolving. We didn't need to be forced into one choice, electric vehicles.
But why have they done this? Is it Greta Thunberg?
It is definitely the green spads and the green people in Whitehall, which I come across all of the time. And fundamentally, we're not getting a balanced debate, except on GB News. This is the sort of thing we can talk on both sides of the argument. And that's the point. Electric vehicles are great things, but they're not practical.
The thing is, though, it's a little bit like mask wearing. I'm absolutely fine, of course I am, with anyone who wants to wear a mask. I'm not fine with being told that we have to wear a mask. I am, of course, fine with anyone who wants to drive an electric car or a diesel or a petrol. I don't like the idea of being told that I have to drive an electric car. When it comes to slowing down on motorways, they want to take it from 70 miles an hour to 64 miles an hour in order to save polar bears. Is that realistic?
Well, this is part of a full net zero report on a number of issues, energy supply, etc. And one of them is actually slowing down on motorways by 10%. We've heard this before. It's ridiculous. It doesn't save anything. There's no proof. I'm calling for the data to show me that this will actually save polar bears.
Well, just on that as well, when you drive around cities now and you see things like congestion charges or you see things like cycle lanes being introduced, does that not slow traffic down, bottleneck it, and mean that there's more emissions?
Absolutely right. Congestion causes more emissions, and this is the paradox of the sort of thing. Next week, I issue a poll results to show you about the ultra-low emission zone expansion that we're paying even more to the Greater London and what that means to businesses and restaurants and theatres and things like that. And I'm willing to come back on it, but it's...
Please do. Absolutely. Just very quickly and very finally as well, Howard, do you get a lot of stick from eco-warriors?
Yes, I do. I have death threats. I've had faeces through the letterbox. I've had all sorts of things that have... but I'm sorry, I'm on the side of common sense.
OK, all right. How does that make you feel, out of interest? Are you all right?
It doesn't make my wife too happy, but the more they do this, the more I want to fight.
OK, well, there you go. Howard, thank you very much. Insightful stuff. As ever, I'll speak to you very, very soon. No doubt, Howard Cox there, founder of Fair Fuel UK campaign. You're with me, Patrick Christys. Coming up, more on those revelations from Harry's new memoir, Spare, as leaked extracts reveal another raft of allegations against his brother, Prince William, and claims that Camilla leaked stories to the press. Oh, no, not Camilla. But first, it's your latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 4:30. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. The Labour leader has promised to take back control by devolving power from London to communities across the country. That's if his party comes to power. In his first speech of the new year, Sir Keir Starmer sets out his plans to grant local councils new control over employment support, transport, energy and housing. He also accused the Prime Minister of being in denial about the problems facing the country.
You saw it yesterday from the Prime Minister. Commentary without solution. More promises, more platitudes. No ambition to take us forward. No sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries.
A number of extracts from Prince Harry's autobiography, Spare, have been leaked ahead of its publication, including an accusation his brother attacked him. Pages which were published in The Guardian allege William grabbed Harry by the collar, ripping his necklace and knocking him to the ground in 2019. Harry says the argument was regarding his marriage to Meghan Markle and claims William called her difficult, rude and abrasive. Buckingham Palace has refused to comment on the reports. And the government is proposing new laws requiring minimum service levels during public sector strikes. The announcement comes amid a third consecutive day of rail disruption as drivers from 15 companies walk out, with some areas having no trains running at all. ASLEF's General Secretary claims the laws could backfire, prompting workers to stage longer periods of industrial action. But Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the new laws are necessary for safety, especially within the NHS.
If, for example, you've got somebody who has a heart attack, maybe a stroke, the idea that there may not be an ambulance coming because there's a strike on, I think is unacceptable. We're not proposing to go the full hog. Other countries, parts of America, Canada, Australia, they have legislation which bans those blue lights entirely from going on strike. We're not proposing that. I think it's very reasonable what we're suggesting.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Patrick will be back with you in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back, wonderful people. Now, Keir Starmer has laid out his major plans for Britain in his first big speech of the new year, outlining plans to take back control by devolving new powers over to employment, support, transport, energy, climate change, housing and local government. The Labour leader also took aim at Rishi Sunak's sticking plaster politics and insisted that he offered real solutions to Britain's problems. Joining me now, I'm very pleased to say, is the chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodds MP. Annalise, thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you on the show. One of the things that stood out for me was Keir Starmer's kind of response to the strike action. So he's saying that he's not going to back the Tories who want to basically limit the amount of strikes that you can take or the extent of the strikes. But at the same time, he doesn't have a blank chequebook. So are we just going to end up under Labour with the same thing that we've got now, which is no new pay rises, continual strikes?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year, and it's really lovely to be here, and Happy New Year to all of your viewers. Well, no, because we know actually what prevents industrial action. We know it from those years of Labour government between 1997 and 2010 when there wasn't a single strike in the NHS. We know it from Labour in Wales, where we're not seeing the level of strike action that we're seeing in England. What prevents strikes is ultimately having both employers and workers sitting down and negotiating a deal. That's what stops that industrial action. Of course, when people engage in industrial action, it results in them losing a day's pay. So it's a last resort. It's not engaged in ultimately lightly. And sadly, we've seen appalling failures from the Conservatives. They've been unwilling to actually sit down to get those negotiations going. And as a result, we're seeing that very high level of strike action.
Okay.
It's higher in our country than in many other nations. And
I do get that. I do get that. You guys want to be elected. You guys want to be elected at the earliest possible opportunity. You did mention Wales there. I just Google NHS Wales. Man carries granddad into hospital amid ambulance shortage is the first headline. So I'm not entirely sure I will be raising Wales as the, pinnacle of Labour-run NHS treatment. But what is Labour going to do to make sure that we don't have ambulance drivers going out on strike, nurses going out on strike, trains costing our hospitality sector £1.5 billion a month with strike action?
Well, there hasn't been that strike action, as I said, under Labour governments, nor indeed those which are in control in Wales. There is that big difference because actually we sat down with employers and with workers and we got an agreement. Now, that means that both sides ultimately have got to compromise. That's what a negotiation is. But we're seeing ultimately the Conservative government just running away from this. You know, they're running away from their responsibility. And as I said, the buck for this ultimately sits with government. Now, every analysis of these new measures they've just announced has said that they will lead to more strikes, not fewer strikes. That's deeply irresponsible.
I get that you're not going to be moved on that. Essentially, your response to the strike action will be to, I suppose, have nicer negotiations, essentially, which, OK, all right. Energy bills, now, this is another big thing for a lot of people.
I do apologise, I'm going to jump in there because it's about having any negotiations, and the government has refused to do that in many cases. It's not about being nice, it's about being pragmatic and getting the best for our country. And that's what Labour would do. So sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's important.
It's all right. I interrupt people all the time. Don't get me wrong. Fine. Now, energy bills. I'm keen to ask you on this, actually, about people's energy bills are going through the roof, etc. People are struggling to pay. Now, I did read with some interest, I think it was a tweet that you put out not so long ago, highlighting that the energy costs at the moment demonstrate structural racism. Could you expand on that a little bit, please? Because, I wasn't asked what colour my skin was when I took out my bills in my energy company. You know, I was quite confused about that.
No, so obviously energy costs and their rise are being felt by everybody. They're being felt intensely. That's why Labour set out measures to help tackle those energy costs, why we want to see a really strong windfall tax, not the weak one full of loopholes that the Conservatives have introduced. So we want to see measures to support everybody. And what I was seeing when it comes, for example, to the impact on black families, we've also seen that impact on single parent families, is that when you have a lower income to start off with, on average, when you have lower savings to start off with, on average, when prices rise, of course, there will be an even bigger impact on you. But this crisis is hitting everybody right now.
I get that. I get that. I've just got it. You did appear to propose a bit of a solution to it, which was Labour's Race Equality Act. But I can't seem to find anything about your Race Equality Act. And I just don't understand how it would work. I mean, when it comes to things like energy bills, for example, and smashing structural racism as you see it with energy bills, would that mean taking money off certain groups of people and giving it over to certain other groups of people?
Well, no, and I'm really happy to explain to you how Labour's measures would be dealing with some of those differences in income in particular. So it's not about some kind of difference in price. Obviously, all prices impact on everybody in the same way. That's pretty obvious. We've just been talking about that. But there is that difference in average income. Again, some people having a slightly higher income than others, but on average, we've seen that black families' incomes tend to be lower. As I said, also single parent families' incomes tend to be lower. As a result of that, we would take action through a Race Equality Act. We would be, for example, saying that if people are doing exactly the same job, then it should be possible for them to see whether a worker who happens to be black is being paid less than a worker who happens to be white. We've had that system in place for men and women for a number of years. We have now the CBI saying that there should be transparency around this, as well as the TUC.
I get that.
One sensible measure to face up to that income difference. I think most people would agree that
but
that
the
is
implication, but the implication there, or the assumption there is, and this is one of the things that Labour does cop it for a lot from people, which is this relentless focus on things like identity politics and race issues, where potentially race issues might not exist. Now, the idea that the lower end of the economic spectrum maybe is overpopulated, as you could say, maybe with ethnic minorities, as opposed to, you know, you could quote some quotes, indigenous white population. I'm air quoting there for people who are listening to me on radio, right? That is one thing. But is that necessarily due to racism? I mean, do you honestly believe that in this country, black people are deliberately paid less by their employers?
Look, we need to have policy that's based on evidence here. You know, that's what's really, really important.
What is the evidence?
If you look on average at, as I said, black families' incomes compared to people who are not black, if you look at average incomes for single parents, they are lower than those for families that aren't ultimately run by single parents. That's the reality. That's what the data shows to us.
But is that racism?
What we said is through, if I can just finish, through those pragmatic measures, really simple ones like, as I say, enabling people to see whether for the same work, they're paid the same amount or a different amount of money. In that way, you can achieve change. And as I
get that, but if it emerges, if it emerges that employers are not discriminating against their employees based on their skin colour, then actually you haven't got a solution to the energy crisis, have you? Or to fixing quote-unquote structural racism, because structural racism doesn't exist.
I'm sorry, I think there's a lot of confusion in what you just said there. If I could respectfully say that, Labour has set out measures a number of times around the energy crisis. As I said, that's why we've called for a proper windfall tax without the loopholes of the government's approach, so that we really could be supporting people around their energy bills, applying to everybody. We've called on government to do that time and again. Unfortunately, what they implemented is not the strong system that we wanted to see, to use profits from those oil and gas companies to get people's bills down. So Labour does have those solutions. We will have an evidence-based approach. And as I said, when it comes to workplace issues, we want to see that transparency. And it's not just Labour saying that, it is the CBI and the TUC as well. These are
just another quick point. Just another quick point, excuse me. When it comes to these race equality acts, one of the other things that I could see there was about you wanting to, quote, diversify the curriculum. What does that mean?
Well, I think ultimately we've seen a lot of discussion and debate around curricula in different schools. We have a situation right now where we have quite a variety of different approaches. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this. If you look, for example, under Labour, all of the work that was undertaken to make sure that children really are fit for the future. And Keir Starmer has said that he wants to make sure when children leave school that they're fit for the future, that they're work ready. That means having the right curriculum, one that's actually suited to their needs and suiting to their needs, whatever the background is, whatever that future may be. That's why Labour says that
is this not quite divisive, though? Sorry to just cut in there, but is this not quite divisive stuff? The idea that a black child born in the same town, or any ethnic minority child born in the same town as me, with the same upbringing as me, might have different educational needs. I mean, are you maybe ideally placed to be trying to pigeonhole people like this? Is it not identifying racial differences and doing more to drive us apart than bring us together? It's highlighting it, isn't it?
Quite the opposite. And actually what I find, I have children myself who are at school, without going into too much detail around that, what I find from them is that children are naturally incredibly curious. They really want to understand about the differences among us and the similarities. That's something that's so wonderful about those younger years. I actually think giving everyone the tools that they need to be ready for the future is something that we should be promoting, that we should be ultimately celebrating. I don't see any kind of problem with that. In fact, I would view it as a strength.
OK, one last quick one. Sorry, I just want to talk to you while I've got you about this take back control thing. I know. Is this top trolling by the Labour Party? We all know what take back control was supposed to be. It was a big Brexit slogan. Keir Starmer, of course, an ardent Remainer. Do you think this is the right slogan for Labour to win back that red wall?
Well, the problem is, of course, it's just been a slogan. So it hasn't been a solution under the Conservatives. It's just been a catchphrase for the Conservatives. It hasn't delivered real change. Labour's approach is very different. We've said we really will be giving control to people in their local communities. We've set out very clear ways we would do that in areas like transport, like employment support, like childcare, like facing up to environmental challenges. We would be giving people that control. I'm afraid the Conservatives have just talked about it. They haven't delivered it. There would be a big difference under Labour.
Annalise, thank you very much, and thank you for your time as well. Bit of an extended interview, so I do appreciate it. Annalise Dodds, Chair of the Labour Party. What do you make of that, ladies and gentlemen? GB Views at gbnews.uk. We covered a few bits and bobs there, didn't we? Strikes, energy bills, Race Equality Act, and taking back control. Devolution, I suppose. Get your views coming in. gbviews at gbnews.uk. Now, despite a huge operation to prevent the memoir being leaked, we're back to Harry now. Both The Guardian and The Sun managed to obtain copies. The book also accidentally went on sale early on in Spain, with one lucky customer managing to grab 2 editions. The upcoming autobiography details an alleged fight in which his older brother, the future British King Prince William, pushed him to the floor. That's according to The Guardian. In another section, the Duke of Sussex allegedly tells the King and Queen consort's relationship and how he and his brother begged Charles not to marry Camilla. There we go. But is it all getting out of hand? Was he right to go public? To break this down further, I am joined by royal broadcaster Helena Chard and reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur. Fantastic stuff, both of you. Right, OK, Helena, I will start with you. Difficult to know exactly where to start with this Prince Harry stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any more sympathy for him now that William slapped him around a bit?
I didn't hear your beginning bit, but I think it was, look, you know, I've got to say this is just unravelling like a reality TV show. That's what I would say. It's unbelievable. Yes, OK, it's alleged that there were some fisticuffs going on. Doesn't this happen in families? It happens all the time. It's something that is absolutely inevitable. But do you go out and air your dirty laundry in public? No, you don't. I feel the royal family with the dignified silence. Absolutely. There are things that really don't make sense. It's absurd. And I cannot believe the things that Harry is coming out with. It's just something that needs to be spoken amongst the family.
Narinder, great to have you back on the show. You're here more than I am, Narinder, to be fair, these days. But I believe you've got kids, I think, haven't you? I mean, they must knock each other about a little bit every now and again.
Yes, actually, my daughter and son, he said she scratched all his hand. But no, I just agree with Helena so much. This line, this weak argument that the British stiff upper lip and the royal family, dignified silence, it's not dignified, it's toxic. Harry is telling you it's toxic. And actually, William, if you're saying, oh, we all hit each other and as kids we can hit each other, you're enabling physical violence. That's disgusting. You're enablers. How can you defend Prince William attacking his brother? He's a bully, William. Meghan may be rude, Meghan may be plenty of things, but William is coming across as a bully who attacks his brother. It's disgusting. It's toxic.
All right, a couple of the other revelations, of course, as well, Helena, that supposedly William and Kate planted the seed of thought in Harry's mind that he should wear a Nazi uniform complete with swastika armband to a fancy dress party. I mean, some people would say it's a bit thick to actually wear it, Helena.
You know, first of all, I have to say that I think it's a bit ignorant to sort of state a one-sided story. So we cannot just go out and you know, cull somebody, as your guest has just done. I just feel, you know, Harry has to take responsibility. Harry wore the outfit. Whether allegedly William and Kate had anything to do with that's to see. But, you know, you can't always be passing the buck. You know, he has to take responsibility.
OK.
All I see at the moment is envy and some kind of revenge, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, to be fair as well, it's probably important for me to say at this point, on Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, as it currently stands, are refusing to comment on it. So it is very much a one-sided story. We don't know whether or not William denies all of this stuff. We can only go off.
It's a one-sided story, Patrick, because William has betrayed Harry. He plants these stories. He goes through his sources. So let's stop this line of, oh, it's a one-sided story. William has done enough damage. He's given his stories. He's secretly given his lines to his palace aides and his sources. And he's damaged Harry.
Narinder, I get that, but I don't know whether or not you've got brothers or sisters, Narinder, but is it really OK to come out and slam them in public like this? You sort it out behind closed doors, Narinder, don't you? It's a bit low rent, it's a bit cheap.
If my brothers and sisters went public, then I would also have to go public. But what Harry's saying is this isn't as dirty as we're all making out to be. He's saying, I want to talk about it because we need to talk about the toxicity in this family. Take away the royal family. They're just two humans. They suffer childhood trauma and they had a dreadful father who had an affair with his lover against their mother's back. It's disgusting what them two have been through. And Charles has done nothing. Charles has been cruel with his silence. Harry desperately wants them back.
All right, right, now, sorry, I've got to, just to balance it up very, very quickly. Oh, we've lost them. All right, no worries. OK, anyway, we're out of time. We're out of time. There we go. Right, royal broadcaster Helena Chard, reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur. look, strong stuff there. We did run over a little bit with Annalise Dodds, though I think we can all agree it was worth it to have the chair of the Labour Party on, so sorry we had to cut that little debate a bit shorter than we wanted there, but this is news, after all. Anyway, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Get your views coming in thick and fast. The Shadow Community Secretary has reiterated Sir Keir Starmer's pledge to be responsible with public cash if Labour is elected to government. Lisa Nandy was questioned earlier on whether a Labour government would give more cash to the NHS to ease pressure and an ever-growing waiting list. She said her party has a cast-iron rule to only borrow to invest and not for day-to-day spending. Today, the Royal College of Nursing claimed that the pressure on the NHS is far from ordinary winter measures, as the union blamed the government and not a rise in COVID and flu infections on the current performance of the health service. But outside the Westminster bubble, there's serious consequences to the pressure on the NHS and the long waiting times faced by patients. Joining me now, I believe, is Donna Bingham, a full-time carer and a mum of 5 whose disabled son was kept in an ambulance outside a hospital for 9 hours on Monday. Donna, thank you very much. Now, the last 3 days, actually, I've got people with a variety of different stories, but with similar-ish stories to yourself to come on and just explain their situation. So thank you very much for coming out and talking about it. Just fill us in. What actually happened to you then and your son as well?
Right, well, my son was presenting poorly on Monday. He's in a locked-in syndrome, so I have to go by his body language. And I was very worried he'd had a stroke because his mouth had all dropped and he was just not communicating. So I called an ambulance. The ambulance turned up very quickly. They assessed him. They decided he needed to go to Bournemouth Hospital. So we got in the ambulance. We got there. The one paramedic got out, left me. The other paramedic went in to, give James's name over and inform them that he was outside. And then he came back and he said, "I'm really sorry. It's going to be a bit of a wait. As you can see, there's about 7 other ambulances here before us." And he said, "I've just walked up the corridor and there's about 14 trolleys, people waiting to go in along the hallway." And I said, "Look, it's fine. I understand you're under pressure. Don't worry about it." Anyway, after about 2 hours, he said to me, "Are you thirsty?" I said, "I am a little bit." And he went and made me a drink. And then he came back and he said, "Oh, there's 13 ambulances out there now." And I said, "Oh, this is awful, but I can't fault them, even though it wasn't an ideal situation for my son to be in because he's locked in and he has psychosis and he could have had a psychosis episode in the ambulance, but luckily he didn't. They're under such pressure." So anyway, he went off, he come back, he brought me a cup of tea, but not only did he bring me a cup of tea, he brought me a hot meal, he brought me a pudding. I just can't fault the ambulance. And then when we finally got in at 1:45 in the morning after being outside from 5 p.m, I was just shocked. There was just, and they had put like courtesy, thing around them with notes on it saying, "Please don't move these. There's patients asleep behind them." But it was just shocking. It was just, and I just feel for the National Health staff because they're struggling. And then we went in and we had to wait another 5 hours to see a doctor. So James wasn't for 14 hours, but it was just,
So what do you want to... That's, by the way, I should ask, actually, initially, sorry, I was very rude then. Is your son all right now?
He's much better today, thank you. He's not 100%, but he's a lot better than he was, yeah.
OK, all right. Well, wish him all the best. Can I ask, look, the NHS is a political football. It is, and that's a shame, but it just is. As it currently stands, to be fair, we're not really hearing any solutions from either Labour or the Tories, are we? I mean, would you start personally by giving the people who work in it a whopping great big pay rise? What would your solution be, do you think?
I think they deserve one. I mean, I spoke to one member of staff while I was there that night, and she said, unfortunately, COVID hit. Some of the staff took time off. Some never came back. And then she said, "I don't like to say it, but we've got people that need high care needs, bed blocking, because out in the community there's a shortage of carers as well." And I think the government need to make this job more attractive. Yes, okay, care should be for love as well, but they can't live on these wages. And I think if they made it a more attractive wage, they'd get more staff. And then hopefully, these people in hospital could be moved out. Then people in A&E could be moved into wards and so on, right back down to the ambulances. And this is the problem. It's having a knock-on.
Donna, look, I really appreciate you coming on and thank you for sharing your story. All the best to you and your family, your son, of course, as well. Donna Bingham, there, he's a full-time carer, mum of 5. His son tragically had quite a nasty time of it in A&E. Right, look, thank you very much, everybody. Keep your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. I've got a response from the health system as well. Our emergency departments remain under significant pressure and patients are experiencing very long waits there. This is not the standard of care we want to provide and reflects exceptional demand on our services. We will always prioritise the sickest of patients and continue to focus on safety and ensuring that we keep our critical services running. Sorry it sounded like the terms and conditions, but it's because I'm out of time for this hour. When we come back, more on Harry and Meghan, more on a new COVID outbreak and loads more on politics as well. Stay tuned.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. Where's the time gone? It's 5 o'clock. You're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up this hour, Prince Harry has released some shocking details of how William allegedly slapped him about a bit. He's piped up as well about why he's justified in speaking out now.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Right, so he claims to have been physically assaulted by his brother, but more on that. He also claims it was William's idea for him to wear a Nazi uniform. He's detailed revelations about his drug use as well, and apparently, anyway, saying that he killed 25 Taliban fighters in his second tour of Afghanistan. There's also some interesting detail about what may or may not have happened in a field behind a pub. But do these revelations make you have more sympathy for Prince Harry? Also this hour, yesterday we heard from the Prime Minister as he set out his vision for 2023, but today his opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, gave an insight into his own plans for the Labour Party. The Labour leader said he wouldn't get the chequebook out, but also wouldn't ban large-scale strike action. Not sure how he adds that up. Was this a rallying call, a vote winner as well for you? And are we facing déjà vu? I'm sick of this, people. You could see it coming a mile off, couldn't you? There's a new variant. Woo, OK, a COVID variant, apparently, responsible for a rapid increase in COVID cases. It's in the US, and it's now been detected in the UK. It's been nicknamed the Kraken in various media reports. I'll ask whether or not we should be worried about the Kraken. Let me know what you think. Everything is on the table to discuss here. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I especially want to hear from you about your sibling rivalry scraps in light of what Prince Harry has been saying. Some utter gold in the inbox. Keep it coming. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'll go to there shortly. But now, it's your headlines.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 5. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. The Labour leader has promised to take back control by devolving power from London to communities across the country. That's if his party comes to power. In his first speech of the new year, Sir Keir Starmer set out his plans to grant local councils new control over employment support, transport, energy and housing. A day after Rishi Sunak outlined his 5 promises, Sir Keir accused the Prime Minister of being in denial about the problems facing the country.
You saw it yesterday from the Prime Minister. Commentary without solution. More promises, more platitudes. No ambition to take us forward. No sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries. 7 million on waiting lists and rising.
Well, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, says Labour has worked against finding solutions.
They've opposed our desire to bring in limitations on the abuse of unions, which causing strikes that are hurting ordinary working families. He stood against our attempts to control illegal migration and get a grip of those people smuggling gangs. All the things that we've tried to do to bring real change, positive change to this country, the Labour Party have opposed time and time again, and all we saw in that speech was the same old from Labour.
A number of extracts from Prince Harry's autobiography Spare have been leaked ahead of its publication, including an accusation that his brother attacked him. Pages which were published in The Guardian allege William grabbed Harry by the collar, ripping his necklace and knocking him to the ground in 2019. Harry says the argument was regarding his marriage to Meghan Markle and claims William called her difficult, rude and abrasive. Buckingham Palace has refused to comment on the reports. The government is proposing new laws requiring a minimum service during public sector strikes. The announcement comes amid a 3rd consecutive day of rail disruption as drivers from 15 companies walk out, with some areas having no trains running at all. ASLEF's General Secretary claims the laws could backfire, prompting workers to stage longer periods of industrial action. Mick Whelan also says further strikes are inevitable unless there's a breakthrough in the long-running dispute over pay. But Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the new laws are necessary for safety, especially within the NHS.
If, for example, you've got somebody who has a heart attack, maybe a stroke, the idea that there may not be an ambulance coming because there's a strike on, I think is unacceptable. We're not proposing to go the full hog. Other countries, parts of America, Canada, Australia, they have legislation which bans those blue lights entirely from going on strike. We're not proposing that. I think it's very reasonable what we're suggesting.
6 women have been arrested following the death of a 1-year-old boy at a nursery in Dudley. West Midlands police say 3 of them were arrested last month on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter and later bailed. A further 3 women were detained yesterday, 2 on suspicion of corporate manslaughter and 1 on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. The nursery has since been shut down. A British tourist has been shot dead in Jamaica in what police there think may have been a contract killing ordered in the UK. 33-year-old Sean Patterson from West London was shot multiple times by the pool of his holiday villa in St James. The personal trainer was on his first visit to the island to meet his father. Jamaican police say 1 man's been taken into custody and they continue to work on the case with UK authorities. The government's decided it won't go ahead with a plan to privatise Channel 4. The idea to sell the broadcaster was announced during Boris Johnson's government. Former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries had said government ownership was holding the channel back. But her successor, Michelle Donnellan, has decided the broadcaster shouldn't be sold. She instead proposed other reforms, including greater commercial flexibility. And up to 60,000 mourners are thought to have gathered in St Peter's Square at the Vatican this morning for the funeral of former Pope Benedict XVI. The Mass was led by Pope Francis. It's the first time in 600 years that the current Pope has buried his predecessor. Benedict XVI is being laid to rest in a crypt beneath St Peter's Basilica. That's according to his wishes. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Patrick.
Well, we're on to yet more revelations in Prince Harry's book. It's looking like an increasingly good read, by the way, can I just say. Anyway, in the latest trailer for the Duke of Sussex's upcoming ITV interview, it's not clear whether Harry will be attending his father's coronation in May. He did say, however, that he still believes in the monarchy, but when asked if he would play an active role in its future, he replied, "I don't know." He's been speaking ahead of the release of his memoir, Spare, where he takes aim at his brother, the Prince of Wales, talks about Camilla leaking stories to the press, and admits taking cocaine. Let's have a little look at that trailer ahead of the release of the ITV interview.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Right, OK, so basically this book, of course, has actually made its way out there, it would appear, certainly into Spain at least, which means that a lot of people now have managed to get a copy of it in Spain, translate it into English, and things are being drip-fed through to us. There are revelations coming in thick and fast, some of which, I regret to inform you, are not fit for broadcast at this time of day. Royal correspondent Cameron Walker is here to pick through this. What's going on?
Yeah, indeed. Maybe have a look at our website if you want to see the story we're referring to there. But we do have more details about Prince Harry's second tour of Afghanistan, where he claims he killed 25 Taliban fighters. He said, under battle conditions, you often fire indiscriminately. However, in the age of Apaches and laptops, everything I did in the course of the 2 tours of duty was recorded and timestamped. I could always tell exactly how many enemy combats I had killed, and it seemed essential for me not to be afraid of that figure. He does go on. GB News does not have a copy of the book. This is only coming through leaks from various media organisations who have managed to get hold of a Spanish copy of the book, which to me was quite surprising because we've been told over the last couple of days that Spare has had such tight security around it. Spare, the name of Prince Harry's memoir, has had such tight security to the point where it was likened to that of the final Harry Potter novel being released back in 2007, under lock and key, having trackers on the trucks which were transporting it to the various bookshops. But it looks like a couple of bookshops, at least in Spain, did not get the memo.
Yes, indeed. OK, so the Taliban side of things, his second tour of Afghanistan, he claims to have killed around 25 Taliban fighters. The other revelation, I suppose, was about him taking cocaine.
Yes, he has admitted to taking cocaine again when he was 17 years old. There has been rumours which Prince Harry has perhaps spoken about in the past, his past trauma, trying to deal and come to terms with the death of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, and the subsequent fallout of that. But clearly Prince Harry is absolutely happy to go into such graphic detail as he appears to be in this book, in this memoir, Spare. Another thing I'd just like to point out, talking about that trauma with Princess Diana, he actually goes into detail of how he found out about his mother's death, Diana, Princess of Wales. He, of course, was on holiday with the late Queen and his father at Balmoral Castle on that day in August 1997. He was woken, he says, he was woken by Prince Charles, and Prince Charles sat on the end of his bed, put his hand on his knee, and said, this is a quote from Prince Harry of what Prince Charles said. He says, "My dear son, Mum has had a car accident. There have been complications. Mum has been seriously injured and has been taken to hospital, my dear son." Then, of course, Princess Diana went on to die in that hospital from the injuries she sustained in that car crash in Paris. And one of Prince Harry's criticisms, if the reports of the leakings, which are to be believed, so this is what Prince Harry actually says, was that the then Prince Charles did not hug his younger son following telling him that his mother had died.
Yeah, that's a bit grim, isn't it, really?
It is slightly grim. I think he's painting the narrative, I think, throughout this book, perhaps. Obviously, I have not read the full book. No one here at GB News has. This is only coming from reports. Sorry, go on.
And as well, it is important to say, as things currently stand, you know, Buckingham Palace, Kensington, etc., they're not commenting on this. So it is very much a one-sided report coming from leaks, but as we understand it, it's relatively credible stuff. This is what Prince Harry is saying in his book. Just talk to me a little bit, Cameron, about the coronation. Do you think he'll be coming to the coronation at all or not?
Yes, so this is an interview he did with Tom Bradby for ITV. It's one of the 3 promotional interviews he has done for the ahead of his publication of his memoir. And Tom Bradby asks him, will you be going to the coronation? Prince Harry says, I don't know. I think clearly there's some issues that he feels he needs to work out with the working members of the royal family, the King, his brother, Prince William. But he said in a separate trailer to the ITV interview that he wants his brother back, he wants his father back. But then talking about all of these private conversations he's had with his brother or father in this memoir, accusing the palace of leaking stories to the press to paint him and Meghan as villains even, to make other members of the royal family look good. The two can't really go hand in hand, I think. Many people are making that argument.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it is fascinating. It is gripping stuff, and there will be ups and downs. It does sound like an absolute roller coaster of a book from what we've managed to glean from it so far. But Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker there, our royal correspondent. Right. The Labour leader, moving on now. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has promised to give fresh powers to local communities taken away from Westminster as he made his first speech of the year, pledging that his party will take back control of politics. He also said a general election should be called straight away to allow the public to have their say over 13 years, as he calls it, of Tory failure. Well, in the last hour, I caught up with Labour Party Chair Annalise Dodds, and when questioned on the cost of living crisis, in particular energy bills, this is what she had to say.
We've set out measures to help tackle those energy costs, why we want to see a really strong windfall tax, not the weak one full of loopholes that the Conservatives have introduced. So we want to see measures to support everybody. And what I was seeing when it comes, for example, to the impact on black families, we've also seen that impact on single parent families, is that when you have a lower income to start off with, on average, when you have lower savings to start off with, on average, when prices rise, of course there will be an even bigger impact on you. But this crisis is hitting everybody right now. That's why Labour set those measures for everybody.
Yeah, I did ask her, actually. I think you can see a full copy of that interview probably online as well. I did ask her there about the fact that essentially energy bills and the rising cost of energy bills was linked to structural racism by the Labour Party. I was quite keen to delve into that. She said that the Race Equality Act would solve it. We don't as yet know what on earth Labour's Race Equality Act really is. But Catherine Forster is with us in the studio right now. GB News' very own political reporter. Catherine, thank you very, very much. Keir Starmer, take back control. I think it is top trolling. I think it's a good... Because obviously that was coined by Brexiteers, by Dominic Cummings, I believe it was, wasn't it? But this taking back control actually is not a reference to what the Labour Party wants to do. They want to kind of almost give control back to local areas, do they?
Give control back to the people.
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue in the same way.
From Westminster, so the Brexit vote, obviously, take back control, that was a very powerful slogan, wasn't it, that helped to get that vote across the line. Take back control from the EU, but also feeling take back control from sort of remote elites, people that thought they knew what was good for you, but maybe wasn't actually what you needed, and that local communities, local people have a better idea of that. And so the arch Remainer, Keir Starmer, who campaigned for Remain, who wanted to have a second referendum on the EU, is now saying that although he campaigned for Remain, going around the country, he completely got the reasons behind the vote, and they are buying into this need to decentralise power and that Westminster is fundamentally broken.
Well, and calls for a general election right away to let the public have a verdict on where we are. I mean, it's not going to happen, is it? But I suppose it's an interesting idea.
Not going to happen because why would Rishi Sunak, 20 points behind in the polls, do that? But Labour have got a bit of a luxury with time, haven't they? Yesterday, we saw Rishi Sunak in the same place making a speech, but very different. Obviously, he's trying to... They've been 13 years in power, but he's saying this is what we're going to do now, and some specifics, whereas Labour's was a more general sort of broad brushstrokes speech, setting out a vision fairly thin on detail, but saying, you know, there's great potential around the country and we need to unlock that, and we are going to set out, talked about national missions they're going to announce in the coming weeks. So lots to be fleshed out.
Lots to be fleshed out. And I think, look, I'll just say, I think the big losers in all of this are the British public. From what we saw yesterday from Sunak, from what we've seen today from Keir Starmer as well, not a huge amount of detail, I would argue. But look, Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine Forster there. GB News' political reporter. Well, talking of the British public being the big losers, I hope my next two people don't get offended by that. I'm sure they are not, indeed, big losers. Let's get some more of you on the show. Joining me now to give their reaction to Starmer's speech, our GB News viewers. We've got Brian in Solihull and Alan in Grimsby. Good stuff, guys. Right, look, Brian, I will start with you, if that's all right. We had Rishi Sunak yesterday. His 5-point plan that you condense into 3 points. And we've got Keir Starmer today, stood in front of what looked like a transformer somewhere in London, talking about vague things he may or may not do in the future. Who won that battle of boredom for you?
Well, he was stood in front of a transformer and speaking like a Dalek. I've read one commentator suggest with the breakdown in the acoustics, shall we say? But yeah, no, listen, I don't disagree with you with a lot of what you're saying, Patrick. I'm not sure that we're hearing messages from anyone really that are going to transform people's lives in a real way, in a meaningful way. I do think, though, that what he came out with today, Keir Starmer, I think it does resonate a little bit, because the whole failure, I think, of the whole Brexit message, and it was okay, the country voted for it, but it was quite a wafer thin kind of one side and the other. Yeah. So I think the fact of taking back control, what we missed in terms of all of that was, well, what's the substance behind that? So at least what he's trying to do here is put some substance into that.
Well, this is it, and this is it. I mean, the irony there is that he is trying to make the point that the slogan "Take Back Control" was just a slogan. And potentially, in your view, given what you just heard there, he's still using it just as a slogan. So, you know, again, no real winners there. Alan in Grimsby, I will lob it your way now. What stood out for you from Keir Starmer's speech? Anything?
Absolutely nothing, Patrick. It's a case of the emperor's new clothes, isn't it? Let's take something that's already been talked about. Let's turn levelling up into take back control at a local level. And very little else I saw that had any substance. I think the problem with Starmer and the Labour Party is that they're completely untrustworthy. What they say now, he's trying to position himself, isn't he, as a centre-left politician, a bit like New Labour, in the hope of capturing everybody into the next vote. But we all know that at the back of the Labour Party is a really strong left wing.
Well, this is it.
Whatever he tells us isn't what's going to happen. I mean, that's the problem with Starmer, is that he'll tell you one thing and do completely the opposite.
Well, the key difference between Keir Starmer and New Labour is New Labour had Tony Blair, and, you know, for a period of time anyway, I think people thought Tony Blair was quite cool, right? And they don't really look at Keir Starmer and think, good grief, you're cool. They think, you know, he's got quite strong dad energy, hasn't he, really, which is not necessarily the coolest thing in the world. I just want to ask you the question of trust. Right, I'm going to ask you the same question, really, on this, I think. But, Brian, I'll throw it your way. Trust is an issue. Alan was highlighting it there. Who do you trust more, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer?
It's very interesting because I think you can, you know, people are pretty polarised, I think, maybe at this point in terms of our whole politics over the last several years. And in terms of trusting one side or the other, do you know what? I don't think there's anyone who's really earned our trust. But the thing is, we do know, and I respect what Alan has said in relation to Labour. I respectfully disagree, because the evidence is this: we cannot trust the Tory government. We know that. I would suggest that we don't know whether we can trust wholly what Starmer and Labour are saying, but let's see in terms of what they then actually go and do.
And that leads me nicely, actually, onto a slightly different question I'm going to ask Alan now, which is that I can understand why people think, after this period of time, Alan, that I've had enough of the Tories. I get that, fatigue, all of this stuff. I can also understand why you don't know if you can trust Labour, but we have had previously Labour governments. Alan, would you be in the market for a new party, for reform or someone like that?
Well, I think that we need something that takes us away from what's become just like a revolving door. It really wouldn't matter whether Labour got into power next time or the Conservatives stayed in power. I don't see very much actually changing because, you could, as you've often said in your show, you couldn't put a cigarette paper between them. And I think one's as bad as the other, for want of a better word. There's the possibility of a new party coming up. I'd see Reform or picking up some momentum at the end of the day, but it's neither of the two parties seem to have any true vision for what this country can be. It's always being sold down the river by the Labour Party, and it's just mute with the Conservative Party. They seem to have given up on any kind of future whatsoever. So yes, there's a possibility that opens fertile ground for somebody else.
Yeah, look, both of you, thank you very much. Really insightful, that. And it's great to just get people who've got their fingers on the pulse in a variety of different parts of the country and what you make of it, and to see what you made of Starmer and what you make of Sunak as well. Really appreciate you both coming on. I'll chat to you again soon, no doubt. We've got GB News viewers there, Brian in Solihull, Alan in Grimsby. Look, I get that Boris Johnson, by the way, was deeply flawed, and I'm not kind of saying that I think he was the oracle and all this stuff. But you know what? At least he kind of had a bit of optimism about him for quite a period of time. At the minute, it just seems like unrelenting misery. Oh, we've got all these problems. Where's the big, bold vision for Britain? For me, it feels as though both leaders of our main two political parties at the moment are just willing to roll over and accept Britain in decline. And I find that quite offensive, actually. But anyway, you're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up, we're on a highway to a greener future, apparently. Sales of new cars have sunk to the lowest level in 3 decades, but electric cars have overtaken diesel in the popularity charts. But this is the big one for me. There's also plans in the pipeline to reduce speed limits on our motorways. We're going to discuss all of that next. I will see you in a tick.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
OK, people, welcome back. Now, new car sales have fallen to their lowest level since 1992. Around 1.6 million new cars were registered during 2022. That's according to data from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders that was released today. So that's 2% down on 2021 and more than 20% below pre-coronavirus levels. Joining me now, because there's quite a lot to unpack here, actually, is our economic and business editor. It's Liam Halligan with On the Money. Do you think, Liam?
In a word, Patrick, lockdown. That's why new car sales have been very, very slow during 2021. We had a lot of the world economy shuttered during 2020 and into 2021. That meant even though there was a lot of pent-up demand for new cars, a lot of those new cars weren't delivered. So a record low number of new cars was registered, as you said, the lowest for 30 years. But the good news is that if you take 2021 as a whole, yes, new car registrations were below 2020. But if you take December 2021, new car registrations were 18% higher than in December 2020, because as the year went on last year, those new car registrations accelerated from a real low at the beginning of last year. So that means the trend is very much up, even though the headline figure here is bad for new car registrations. And the SMMT, who you mentioned there, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, the industry body that put out these numbers today, I spoke to their CEO, Mike Hawes, earlier, and he's actually really upbeat about new car sales in 2023. This is what he said.
2023, we're actually forecasting an uplift, maybe 15%. So we're going to look counter-cyclical. Yes, the economic challenges everyone faces are severe. But most people buy a new car on a form of finance, which fixes in a cost for 3 or 4 years. And if the cost of running that new vehicle is cheaper than the one you already own, it can be advantageous to a household income.
Yeah, but what about the kind of type of cars, Liam, that were bought? Is there a change there at all?
Well, lots of GB News viewers and listeners will know that, you know, the talk down the pub these days, oh, I got a hybrid, oh, I got an EV,
Yeah.
oh, you don't want to get a diesel, mate, because diesel's a lot more expensive.
Got a diesel.
So have I got a diesel.
Yeah.
I've got 3 diesels, actually. But anyway,
All
that's
right, all right. It's not a competition,
that's
mate.
like a
All
big,
right.
big family. Yeah, we're competing on how stupid we were. Diesel, Patrick, less than 10%, just 9.6%. Just a few years ago, diesel was half of all cars, vans and trucks that were bought in the UK. After 2015, though, you had that Volkswagen emissions scandal. Diesel was seen as a lot less environmentally friendly. Cost of diesel went up a lot. And look at electric vehicles coming through. 16.6% of pure electric vehicles were sold. Vehicles sold in 2022 were electric, so overtaking diesel for the first time in history. And then you've got your hybrids. These are cars with petrol or diesel engines. They were 11.6%, but they've got a battery in there as well. And the engine charges the battery, and then you switch the battery, switch back to petrol or diesel. So these are sort of hybrid cars. They give you a bit more range. But all in all, it's a really big change. The first time that we've seen diesel dip below petrol, electric vehicles. And we're going to see a lot more of this, of course, because the law as it stands is that the UK will ban sales of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030.
Are people going to get clobbered, though? Because, you know, we're seeing things like ULEZ, right? We're seeing congestion charge.
That's the London emission charge.
Yeah, and Birmingham as well. I only know that because I got 2 tickets in Birmingham, one on the way in and one on the way out. I didn't realise, but anyway, thank you, Birmingham. And but when let's say everyone goes to electric, aren't they just going to end up ramping up taxes on things like that? And they're going to ramp up, they'll find a new charge. Are people just going to end up getting clobbered? It's not actually a money saver to go electric, is it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm on the record a lot saying that I think that in terms of technology, electric is a blind alley because you still need to generate the electricity, right? And a lot of that electricity is still generated from fossil fuels. So it's not even as if they're necessarily green. Electric cars use 5 times more copper, Patrick, than conventional combustion engines. Copper is going to go to the moon. It's going to become the new oil in terms of the price of copper. All those rare earths in those batteries in electric cars, cobalt, lithium, and so on, many of which tend to be disproportionately in countries that don't particularly like us, like China and elsewhere. So I actually think the best technology for cars is hydrogen going forward. Now, that might be an unfashionable view, but I think among a lot of scientific people, that is the conventional wisdom. But we'll have to see. A huge amount of change going on. I think what is good about these figures, you've got the SMMT and others saying there will be more new car sales this year. I don't think used cars, which have gone prices very high over the last year or two, I don't think they're going to come down in price particularly. But at least we will be selling more cars of whatever hue, petrol, diesel, electric, and a lot of those cars are made in Britain. We are still a major car maker. People put us down, but that's good for jobs.
Lovely stuff. Liam Halligan, thank you very much. Our economics and business editor. Right, you're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up, more reaction as Prince Harry justifies speaking out against the royal family.
I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
Loads of revelations from Prince Harry, fights with his brother, why he wore a Nazi uniform, how many Taliban terrorists he killed, and drug use, as well as something fruity that may or may not have happened behind a pub. Yes. Anyway, I want to know what your views are on all of this. GBviews at gbnews.uk, but before that, it's your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 5:30. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB Newsroom. The Labour leader has promised to take back control by devolving power from London to communities across the country. That's if his party comes to power. In his first speech of the new year, Sir Keir Starmer set out his plans to grant local councils new control over employment support, transport, energy and housing. He also accused the Prime Minister of being in denial about the problems facing the country.
You saw it yesterday from the Prime Minister. Commentary without solution. More promises, more platitudes. No ambition to take us forward. No sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic. The worst decade for growth in 2 centuries. 7 million on waiting lists and rising.
A number of extracts from Prince Harry's autobiography Spare have been leaked ahead of its publication, including an accusation his brother attacked him. Pages which were published in The Guardian allege William grabbed Harry by the collar, ripping his necklace and knocking him to the ground in 2019. Harry says the argument was regarding his marriage to Meghan Markle and claims William called her difficult, rude and abrasive. Buckingham Palace has refused to comment on the report. The government is proposing new laws to guarantee emergency services provide a minimum level of service during strike action. Under the plans, unions could be sued if fire, ambulance and rail services don't provide adequate cover. A number of union bosses have criticised the proposals, but Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the new laws are necessary for safety, especially within the NHS.
If, for example, you've got somebody who has a heart attack, maybe a stroke, the idea that there may not be an ambulance coming because there's a strike on, I think is unacceptable. We're not proposing to go the full hog. Other countries, parts of America, Canada, Australia, they have legislation which bans those blue lights entirely from going on strike. We're not proposing that. I think it's very reasonable what we're suggesting.
You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Patrick will be back with you in just a moment.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, everybody's favourite topic. A number of extracts from Prince Harry's autobiography Spare have been leaked ahead of its publication. In fact, the whole book has in Spain, apparently, including an accusation that his brother attacked him. Pages which were published in The Guardian allege that William grabbed Harry by the collar, ripped his necklace, just say that one again, ripped his necklace, and knocking him to the ground in 2019. Harry says the argument was regarding his marriage to Meghan Markle and claims William called Meghan difficult, rude and abrasive, which, of course, is something that she absolutely, categorically is not. Buckingham Palace has refused to comment on these reports. Now, there we go. Right, so apparently we are going to be going to a couple of guests on this now, I believe. Ingrid Seward joins me, I believe, to talk about whether or not the royals are at war. There we go. Good. Right, joining me now is royal commentator and biographer Ingrid Seward and entertainment correspondent and writer Rebecca Twomey. Great to have you both on the show. There's been a lot of revelations, actually, since we first wrote that little intro, hasn't there? Including drug use, including how many members of the Taliban he may or may not have killed. Ingrid, I will start with you. This book looks like a page-turner.
It certainly does. I really didn't think that Harry would say half the things that he allegedly has said. Well, he obviously has said, because people have seen the book. I'm quite surprised that he should be so open. But, of course, he would talk about his time in the army. It was very important to him. And obviously he'd talk about his mother. As for the row with William, well, that was the first story that came out. But I don't think that Harry would be frightened. I mean, Harry's a fighter himself. So I can imagine there was quite a scuffle.
Isn't it, Ingrid? Which is that, actually, how believable is it that Prince Harry was so scared of his brother William? Harry, the bloke who in the same book admits to killing 25 members of the Taliban on his second tour of Afghanistan. And, Rebecca, I'll bring you in on this. William comes in and rips his necklace. I mean, come off it. Are we expected to feel sorry for him about that?
I mean, this is a narrative that Harry likes to keep peddling, but I think it's interesting because it's actually going to sway a bit more sympathy towards William here and Charles, because actually it might do the complete opposite of what Harry would like it to do. And instead of us all going, oh, poor Harry, he's had such a terrible, terrible time of it, you actually think, why is he revealing all this very, very private information? And why isn't William reacting? I mean, he must have nerves of steel not to want to say something and do something. But we don't really know what went on behind closed doors, because even in that recent Netflix documentary that Harry and Meghan did, we do know that William sent quite a shocking text. We don't know the context or what was in that text, but we do know that it was, not a positive moment.
No, absolutely not. And also, as well, Ingrid, Harry has revealed that apparently it was all William and Kate's idea to wear a big Nazi costume complete with swastika emblazoned armband. I mean, what kind of idiot wears a Nazi costume in public, no matter who's telling you to do it?
Well, I think Robert Lacey actually revealed this in his book about William and Harry. And I mean, they went to a costumier and hired the outfit. I haven't read it, obviously, that's what I gather. Yeah. But you don't have to wear it just because William and Kate took you there. I mean, Harry is always the victim, and once again, he appears to be the victim in this. He was frightened of his brother William. He was the victim in their fight. He's the victim of the Nazi uniform. Nothing is ever Harry's fault, and I think that's where everybody loses sympathy, or what little sympathy they had for him is lost, because it's never his fault. And he never says, I was an absolute idiot doing that. And then you would feel much warmer towards him.
Yeah, Rebecca, I mean, supposedly he's, when William pushed him around a little bit, slapped him, or whatever he's saying he did, and he fell backwards into a dog bowl. The dog bowl shattered, and William apparently has said something along the lines of, like, you don't need to tell Meghan about this. And, of course, he didn't initially tell Meghan. He just called his therapist. Do you think that people just want Harry to shut up now?
No, I don't, because I think this is, in a way, it's a gift that keeps on giving. But also, I do think it might actually be benefiting the royal family. I know people are going to disagree with me on this, but it actually makes them much more human and relatable. You actually see two brothers. Now, lots of people, I think, can relate to, pressures within families, bonds between siblings breaking up, particularly when a new partner joins the family. So actually, it's while the royals are often accused of being outdated, in a way, it makes him a bit more endearing and human, because Harry's revealing very personal, private stuff that does, I think, in a way, endear the rest of the members of the family to the rest of us.
There are indeed some other private things that I'm not allowed to say on national television at this particular moment in time, so I would urge neither of you to do that either as well. People can go to our website to find out some rather revealing facts about Prince Harry's formative years, shall we say. Ingrid, do you think he should be banned from coming to the coronation?
No, I don't. I don't think that's going to do any good, but I think he might find it very awkward coming to the coronation. But I mean, I think, he and Meghan need to be seen to be royal, because otherwise people are going to get completely bored of them just being Harry and Meghan whinging about the world and everything that's going on in it. So I think he needs to be seen. And Charles is not going to ban them from coming to the coronation. He's not that sort of person. Maybe he should, but he won't.
Yeah, and do you think, though, that we should have some kind of response from William? I mean, at the minute, the narrative is Prince William's rocked up at Harry's house, let himself in, slated his wife, and then pushed him to the ground. I mean, it's not a great look for Wills, is it? I'm sure we've all got views on exactly what happened there. But, I mean, should William not speak out and go, well, actually, Harry had a pop at Kate as well, Rebecca?
I think, like I said previously, I think William must be desperate to say something and do something, but he is in a very different position to Harry. He's got a very different trajectory, obviously, with what's in store for him later on in life, with, being in line to the throne. But with kind of his response, I think really it's a sad tale of two brothers who have fallen out. And I think we're only getting, as we know, one side of the story. We don't really know what other arguments were going on. We know that Meghan and Kate fell out over a pair of tights before the wedding and there were tears. We know, like I said, that William was texting Harry. We know that there's this argument that William was very cross when the Queen and King Charles were present. And now we know about a physical situation. And what the book does say is that William was asking Harry to fight back, say, spar with me.
I'm not surprised. He sounds like an absolute wimp. Seriously, come on, fight back, stand up for yourself. I mean, come on, really. You've got this woman here who appears to be running roughshod all over you, dragging you away from your family, turning all your friends against you. Fight back, for goodness sake. I mean, do you think, Ingrid, this was a big brother looking at his little brother saying, be a man, what on earth has happened to you?
Yeah, I think it could well be, because apparently he also, Meghan accused Kate of having a sort of mum brain. I'm not sure that those are the words he used, but what she meant was that, Kate had just had a baby and had, wasn't thinking clearly. So she was, had a baby brain. I mean, how dare she say that? And William must have been absolutely furious with Harry. I don't know what timing this all was. I think this might have been, the fight with Harry might have been before. I'm not sure when this all took place. But William must have had a lot of pent-up rage against Harry, and Harry, always blaming other people for his predicament. And I think he probably deserved a punch on the jaw, not just a broken necklace.
Rebecca, you're shaking your head there. I'm assuming you wouldn't have popped Harry in the face.
No, absolutely not. And I also think what strength Harry must have to not punch back. And actually, you do end up winning a fight when you don't really respond. No, sometimes you do. You actually show a greater depth of character when you don't react in the way someone wants you to. Because it looks like William is desperate for a fight and to have this out. And Harry just doesn't seem to want to communicate that way.
Both of you, just quickly, have we stumbled on? I've been wanting to ask this question all day, actually. I can't believe it's taken me this long. The show's nearly over. Is the way for them to sort it out to just have a massive scrap? Ingrid?
I don't think there will be a moment, certainly in the next few months, for them to sort it out. And then I think these kind of things, they go cold. And William probably thinks, I just don't want to go there. I don't want to have to talk to Harry. The only person that can sort this out is their father. I really feel that.
Okay.
And whether he's got the time or the will to do it, I don't know.
Rebecca, if you're being honest, would you pay to watch a fight between Prince Harry and Prince William?
I think Meghan would probably fight better than Harry, and I'd pay lots of money to see Meghan in the ring because I do actually admire her.
All right. Both of you, thank you very much. There we go. That is Ingrid Seward there, who is a royal commentator and biographer and entertainment correspondent and writer, Rebecca Tomei. I think it's a way to settle it. Do it once and for all. You imagine the sellout event that would be. We've got YouTube boxes now. Why not? Why not two royals? Anyway, moving on. I am, of course, joking, but there we go. Right, now, this is something that's slightly more serious, although I am struggling to take it seriously, given where we've been in the past with COVID. We all saw this coming. Has anyone got a terrible, catastrophic sense of déjà vu here? Because last time round, there was something a bit fruity going on in China, wasn't there? People had the coughs, people had the sneezes, and then it started coming our way, and then we started having restrictions for people, and then all of a sudden there was a load of new variants. Well, this time round, what's been happening? Big outbreak in China. Oh, should we have restrictions on people from China coming over here? Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we're going to start having laws about compulsory testing, etc. We start being told, don't we, about whether or not rolling the wicket as to whether or not we should start having more restrictions, social distancing, working from home. Ah, bingo, here we go, because apparently there's a new COVID variant. Who could have seen that coming? An Omicron subvariant of COVID, responsible for mass transmission in the USA, has now arrived in the UK. It's been nicknamed the Kraken. The WHO has warned that it is the most transmissible subvariant that has been detected yet. Studies believe it is responsible for 70% of new infections in the US, but also appears to be just as mild as its ancestor Omicron and its variants. Right, with me now is Dr. Bharat Pankania, Senior Clinical Lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School. Can you forgive me for not getting excited about the Kraken?
Yeah, I do, Christy. Of course, information is power and knowledge, but no need to get dramatic about this. I totally agree with you. So look, number one, the European nations and North America are in a very, very good position because of immunity by vaccines or infection. Number two, these variants are, yes, I accept, highly infectious, but our most vulnerable population are already in a better place because they've encountered it or they've got immunization. So we are in a good place. The thing is, this is population medicine. For something that is highly infectious, yes, it's highly transmissible. It will infect. It will find the vulnerable, and those vulnerable people, if they are in the hundreds and thousands, i.e. in China, for example, then you've got a problem in China.
Exactly. Now, I think lessons need to have been learnt from when we were right in the thick of the COVID thing, whether it's from the medical community or political community, but also the media. We hyped it up. We were all scaring the living daylights out of everyone. Actually, could the Kraken be a good thing based on what you've just said?
Well, no, knowledge is power, and these what you call is these variants always worry you because whilst you want it to go in one direction, i.e. mild disease causing, you don't want a variant that would suddenly bypass the antibodies produced by our previous immunity. So, of course, one is always edgy when new variants emerge. As long as the variants are in a favorable direction, we smile and we say, that's great.
OK, all right, so no massive need to panic then. Can you just explain to me, is it expected to gradually get milder than COVID? So even if we're seeing things like cases going up, seeing what's happening in China, it is expected the direction of travel should be in the mild zone?
Well, we would love it to be that way. And so let's take an example of, for example, measles. Measles has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it has never gone into the direction of it is now a mild infection. So not all viruses tend in the direction of less disease causing. Many do. I don't think this one is a case of it's mild, but we've got the upper hand. The reason why we've got the upper hand is we've encountered it before. We've encountered it via vaccines or infections, and that is what is putting us in a good position.
Good stuff. Dr. Bharat, thank you very much. Dr. Bharat Pankania there, who, of course, is the Senior Clinical Lecturer at the University of Exeter's Medical School. Right, good stuff. I've only got a few minutes left, and I'm just going to go to the inbox because all of you, thick and fast, all day have been getting in touch about the Prince Harry, Prince William stuff, and, of course, crucially, your sibling rivalries. I absolutely love it. Christopher has been in touch. He says he'd pay hard brass to see Rumble in the Jungle #2, i.e. the big Royal Rumble. I think that Harry and William are missing a trick here. They should just settle it once and for good in a boxing ring somewhere on the Mall, raffle off all the tickets for charity, sell all the sponsorship for charity. They could kill two birds with one stone there, and crucially, we'd have to stop hearing about all of this stuff. Margaret says, Harry's problem is he cannot bear not being heir. He wants to be king. He wants his wife to be queen. He's not been spare since Prince George was born. It's a pity he's too thick to fully understand a system that is hundreds of years old. Perhaps, gosh, Margaret's got views. He's planning to rustle up and an American army and march on Kensington Palace to depose Prince William. I was with you for a while there, Margaret. I was with you for a while. Fran says, if he grew up with 4 brothers, he would have seen scrapping every day. That's what brothers do. And just one final one quickly before I hand you over to Michelle. Yeah, I was asking you to send in your sibling scraps, OK? I'm sure you've all got a few. Dee says that her brother sliced her lip open with a knife from a doll's tea set nearly 60 years ago. She's trying to get her deal from Netflix as we speak right now. Julie used to apparently burn her younger brother with the steam off the kettle when he annoyed her. She was 11 at the time, crucially still not written a book about it. Patrick, 63 years ago, my brother fired an arrow at me from a crossbow, albeit with a sucker on the end. It still made me cry. Believe it or not, we're best friends. Grow up, Harry. That's from Kerr. John says, my brother used to beat me up at least 3 times a year, and we're still fine. Another John says that he had a patch of grass at the side of his house where they settled all their differences. I came off really bad with brother number 2. He caught me off guard with a perfect headbutt. All of this stuff has not resulted in people massively, massively coining in off what is normal sibling rivalry. Jubes and Co. Next for Michelle Dewberry. What's on the agenda?
Oh, if you've not beaten up your sibling, you've not lived.
I've beaten up a few other people's siblings.
I won't be discussing Harry and Meghan tonight, though. It's a H&M free zone for me, Patrick. I will be looking at Starmer's plan today. Did we see it? What do we think about it? Antisocial behaviour. Michael Gove has been put in charge of that as well. I personally think it's time to have like a broken window type strategy in this country. Clamp down on all of the kind of the things that people might think are silly little things, whether it's litter or anything like that. If you start there, I think you might, sort out some of the bigger stuff. What else am I talking about? Oh, yeah, the top CEOs in this country have earned more today by 2 o'clock than your average worker will have in a year. Is that a problem? And if so, why? All this kind of pay equality. And I heard you talking about it as well, motorways, 64 miles an hour. Don't forget as well, on normal roads, there's pushes as well to make them 20 miles an hour, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely insane.
Well, I mean, you're lucky to go to 64 miles an hour anyway. I was on a completely...
This is very true.
I was on a completely empty motorway the other night, and there was big signs that were saying 50 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour. What's the point? Anyway, Michelle, thank you very much. I will be watching with interest. Jubes and Co. coming your way very, very shortly. That's all from me, but don't go anywhere because, yes, Michelle Dewberry is here with Jubes and Co. Thank you very much, everybody who's been tuning in. I am not covering for Mark Stein this evening. You will all be pleased to know it's quite enough from me. I'll be back again tomorrow, 3 p.m, for more of this.
I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. For most, it's a fine Friday tomorrow. The winds will be easing before picking up later overnight. It'll still be mild, but not quite as mild as today. Low pressure is controlling our weather. These weather fronts are bringing some wet weather this evening and tonight. In fact, this cold front will sink southwards, spreading a band of rain across all areas. Could be quite heavy for a time as well, so you may get woken up. And at the same time, in the northwest, the winds are going to get very lively indeed. A very blustery night over the Western Isles and northern parts of the mainland of Scotland, where there'll be further rain. There's that rain band sweeping across England and Wales. Clearer skies follow on behind, but temperatures are going to stay a few degrees above freezing. So it'll be a slightly fresher start to Friday compared to Thursday, but it won't be that cold. And for many, Friday's then a fine, bright day. Plenty of showers still across Scotland. The wind's steadily easing here, and the showers clearing away as well. So the central belt having a dry afternoon. Clouding over parts of northern England and North Wales with a little bit of showery rain here, and the threat of some rain at times along the south coast. But for many, as I said, it's a dry and a bright day. Still pretty mild. Temperatures above average, but just not quite as warm as today. We are going to see more wet weather on Friday evening. Initially, a few showers in the southwest, but that turning into a pretty intense band of rain sweeping in during Friday night and into the weekend. It means Saturday starts fairly soggy for a good chunk of England, Wales and southern Scotland. That rain should be edging away to the east
drier weather following for a time, but then a whole raft of showers coming into western parts during the afternoon. So the weather's chopping and changing all the while, a fairly brisk breeze as well. Temperatures could get to 10 or 11, maybe 12 Celsius on Saturday morning, but actually feeling cooler through the course of the day. Temperatures tending to drop off, and temperatures back closer to average by Sunday, which will see some sunny spells, but it will still be pretty blustery with further heavy showers.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest